Oh, hello there. Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Johnny Baghead. That's me. Over here. One sec, actually. Ugh. There you go. Just had to do some micro adjustments. I am back. Hello, welcome. Today is not a stream that I planned. Obviously, I do stream every Tuesday, but what I'm doing today is not what I planned to do. On Saturday. Hello, Clarice. Welcome. I see you there. No. On Saturday, I claimed we were going to play some more Doom Legacy of Rust today. Kind of a lot happened over the weekend, though. So first, I found out that this new Famicom Detective Club demo was coming out today, which has bagheads in it, so we've got to look at it. You know, the committee mandates these things. But there was a lot of Silent Hill 2 remake stuff to come out. And the first and this is the crazy thing, actually, kind of funny. The first thing I did when I re-debuted this bag, when like we upgraded hardware, you know, the scuff era is the scuff era. I kind of don't count it. That was very much like a test bed technical nightmare. But the first thing I did as this 1.0 Johnny was looking at what we had seen and heard about the Silent Hill 2 remake at the time, last year. I think that was about last year, right? I don't know. Time. What is time? I don't know. And yeah, they've shown a lot, and it turns out I have a lot to say. Oh, boy. I have a lot to say. Especially because I think there's a lot of stuff that needs to be talked about that isn't being mentioned in the previews, or is being overlooked, or people are just kind of only looking at the parts that are okay or look fine. And I do not think that's the case of what we've seen. As you know what, we should just get into it. Okay, let me swap over here, and I'm gonna put some music on. Though obviously we'll come over and stop this every so often. I'm just gonna make sure it's not too loud on my end. There we go. But you know, we'll have to come in and stop that video, so you won't see it. I actually have a big notepad of all the things I plan on talking about. I was like, okay, like go through these again. Look at time codes you need, things like that. And I think what I'm going to do first, we're going to go back in time a bit. We are going to look at the release date trailer from a few months ago. This one here. So yeah, let me stop the music again. You know what? I'm gonna bring this over here. I don't need that tab there. There we go. We'll get to this. But we're gonna look at this one first. I don't know if I'm gonna immediately. We'll get to it. We'll get to it, because I have some hot takes on yellow paint. That it's an overblown issue, but there's definitely some stuff to talk about with it. So, here we'll full screen it a bit. Okay, that's gonna be too loud, I think. But I already have stuff to talk about, and let me get my time codes here. Okay, you know what? Before we get into it too much, big disclaimer, because just in case, there are going to be major spoilers for the original Silent Hill 2 throughout this stream. I can't talk about this stuff without talking about not only the full story, but a lot of the symbolism, the environmental storytelling, and yeah, honestly, probably some spoilers for Silent Hill 1. I'm not sure about the others. Probably the Western games, just because they kept trying to rehash Silent Hill 2 to varying degrees. But, you know, especially Silent Hill 2, we are going to be talking about very deep plot elements, stuff that you might not even get in a first time playthrough. So do bear in mind with that. But the first thing I want, okay. Also, I'm using the Survival Horror Network playthrough, but I have noticed that some of the audio is broken in some of the cutscenes, like the background music. So that is gonna mess with some of how these cutscenes look. But in some cases, that won't make too much of a difference. So let me go to my first time code here. Here we go. I'll talk about this a bit more later, but a thing that I've noticed is that the fog is just not as dense and close as it used to be. Like, it's still very dense, but the actual draw distance is a lot bigger. But that's a bigger issue with the fact that you had to make that adjustment because you now have the camera over the shoulder. So the camera has a, like, flat, horizontal look. It doesn't have this more, like, top-down look. But let me time it here. We'll get it just about lined up here. In some cases, I will be, you know, like, muting videos and stuff, and I'll put background music on for those. But so this is, in a sense, not a huge deal, but I think it's something that is worth mentioning. And it's more of a general philosophy that this remake has. So I definitely think I need to give a preamble. That's probably not the right term, but I ramble, so it will fit. When it comes to video game remakes, and there's the whole problem where the term remake is so loosely defined, where a remake can go all the way from, oh, we just ported it to a new engine, and that new engine has some, like, different lighting and stuff, to it's in a new engine and we redid all the graphics, but the main gameplay is essentially the same, a la Dead Rising Deluxe Remaster. And then you kind of get that, like, weird middle ground where you've got Resident Evil 1 Remake, which is very one-to-one in terms of events and presentation, but then mixes things up, adds new things. It's kind of like someone took that original game and literally tried to remake it in the standard of the GameCube. And then we have what I refer to as adaptations or reimaginings. It kind of depends, but you look at something like Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil 3, Demon Cells. I'm going to count Demon Cells because even though the gameplay is mostly the same, like, art direction's completely different in that. But you get all the way over to Resident Evil 2, and that is a modern adaptation of the idea of Resident Evil 2. I have to bring that one up specifically because I have directly had people say to me that it is essentially the same game as the PlayStation 1 version, which, you know that meme of the brain aneurysm? It that happened to me hearing that. But my position on Silent Hill 2 is different from a lot of other games that have gotten remakes in the past. The video game industry has a problem where it's a lot younger compared to other popular, like, artistic mediums. It's like other closest contemporary is movies, and movies have been going on for over 100 years. And it's at a point now where, you know, we don't look at all filming techniques and types from decades ago as dated. There are movies that came out like 30, 40 plus years ago that aren't considered dated. They might be in a negative sense. They don't seem, you know, like products of their time, which, you know, does apply to some movies, but usually it's only like the setting or maybe the kind of like social morals of the time on display kind of thing. But movies has had the time to grow, develop the techniques, technical, artistic, subjective, all that. So it's at a point now where there's kind of, new techniques are coming, but there's no real standard. There's no idea of, hey, this movie that came out in the 70s, it would be better if you put CG in it. We can't, the late 90s, early 2000s went through that already. We're decades beyond the idea that just refilming at a higher resolution, putting CG over the old effects, we're beyond the idea that that instantly is better. Video games hasn't really grown out of that yet. The industry doesn't quite recognize that a lot of video games stand as they not only stand as they were, but what that game represents, like the things everyone loves about those games, is how they came out. It's how they played at the time. It's the time they came out with. And I think there's a discussion to have with, Silent Hill 1 was literally their first attempt at that style of game. They essentially invented a subgenre, survival horror. So the idea of remaking that game and taking some creative liberties, making a more darker, dingy mansion and some of the extra backstory of this stuff makes sense. You start to get later on into games. Also, welcome to the stream, PS2 or Die. Very, very PS. It's like weirdly a PS2 themed day, but we're not gonna play any PlayStation 2. But we have footage. But thank you, appreciate the lurk as always. But I think when you get to a certain era of games, and it's a bit contradictory, this opinion. I'm a bit of a hypocrite because there are some games that I think like, okay, yeah, this is the product is of the time, but I think there's merit in trying again. And then I think there are games where, like, no, the way they made it is the game that stands. That's the product that people like. And for me, Silent Hill 2, the way the authors intended, the limits the authors had, and because of, those limits, and just what came out. Like, Silent Hill 2 is special because of the way it came out. Silent Hill 2... if you just changed all the textures, even if they were like higher res, you wouldn't get the same experience if you recast the characters. It's every little bit of it. It's like how it plays, how it presents its story, how it, with what Clarice mentioned about fog, how that was in Silent Hill 1 originally to cover draw distance and then built into the world. And in Silent Hill 2, they used that to keep the draw distance low to allow them to push graphics in a different way. It's actually like wasn't that high budget of a game for the time, despite coming out Konami. So it's amazing how good Silent Hill 2 and 3 look on PlayStation 2. And the reason is because they're using that draw distance that PlayStation 2 games just really didn't use at the time. Like, you go play any of the GTA games, like, none of them have a draw distance close to as short as that. And it's not that the engine can't do a better draw distance. There's, funny enough, if you look it up, Silent Hill 2 and Silent Hill 3 Boundary Break, it shows the PC version where they hacked it to show what the maximum render distance could be. And it is quite high, but it's, it goes against what they're going for. And I attest, and I think I think there's people who agree, because I talk to some of them at times, but there is this sentiment with some of us that Silent Hill 2, the way it came out, is the thing that people love. Not the idea of Silent Hill, which I feel like is how this remake is treating it. The idea of what Silent Hill does, people love, but then suddenly, actually playing it, actually looking at it. And, look, granted, there are people who feel that way. That's how this fucking remake got made. Plus, also just how renowned it is. Konami openly were basically just like, look, we could have started Silent Hill 1, but everyone loves Silent Hill 2, so we start with that. And the reason I'm giving this preamble here is not only to get my position clear, that I think the special part of Silent Hill 2 is all aspects of it. So that includes how it was released, right? is when I start to talk about changes. Now, this is one of the first things we're going to talk about, but the thing I want to make clear is that the criticism isn't necessarily on the difference, because that's quite a different subject from what I want to talk about, which is the idea of changing things. Silent Hill, the town, in canon, this is something the original devs have always insisted, that throughout, the 4 original games, and though it was like, the games kind of contradicted it, even the Western devs try to keep this pretense up. Silent Hill, the town, is meant to be populated and working. Crazy shit happens there. It's debatable how many people who live in the town or visit the town even experience most of it. But the town is functional. This town is supposed to be working. But obviously when Nightmare takes over reality, it fucks with shit. It fucks with time, it fucks with space, like all sorts of stuff. I'm bringing this up because, as shown here, and we'll see it more in some of the other shots, the graveyard that you visit, which is like technically not in the town even, it's like kind of on the like outskirts. Like, I guess like if you were going on a map and you were going like district, it would technically be within the town borders, but you're not in the town area. And the choice was, okay, we're going to make it look like this graveyard has not been maintained for decades. Why? Why does this need to be different? And this is why I question it, because you could have discussion of like, oh, it's creepier, or oh, it fits the kind of town, like hidden from time by whatever. But my criticism here is like, why was there a choice to change this? Why did someone look at this original scene as it plays out here and think, well, no, these graves,
excuse me,
shouldn't look like this?
No, it's okay. I didn't mean to scare you.
And we'll look at a little bit of this and then we'll talk of the other one. But honestly, we'll get to the main thing here. I'll definitely say it's a very minor thing. I don't know if I'm as bothered about it with most of the stuff. You can definitely hear, and Akira Yamaoka openly admitted this, that when he came onto the project, he wanted to do like a very different soundtrack, but he understood that that's not what fans would want. But it definitely feels like the music is a bit extra. Like there's a lot more instruments added, or more like orchestral parts to songs.
Excuse me. I'm sorry.
Okay. So this is a different angle, but we'll stick with this one for now. So, okay. Angela looks noticeably different. She sounds different. So, let's go into this. So, Angela in canon, I might not get the exact age right here. I think she's supposed to be between the ages of like 19 and 21, but I want to say 19. Maybe even younger than that, but I want to say she's supposed to be 19. Now, Angela's entire backstory is about the years of abuse that she suffered from her family, primarily her dad. And an intentional part of the design, and this is straight up mentioned in the power, I think it was packaged with the power release. I think there might be other ways to find it. Obviously now you can find it online, but I think it was released other ways. There's the making of documentary that came with the power release, and it brings up that Angela was intentionally casted to be played by an older person. And I'm bad with names, so I actually forgotten the name of Angela's voice actress. Though she's, worked all over the stuff. Like, still does voice acting and music stuff today. But she's meant to look aged, despite the fact that her character is meant to be, like, late teen, young adult kind of area. And the reason for that is that Silent Hill 2 does not directly have characters say, here's what's happened to me, here's what's wrong with me, etc., etc. So much of how these characters are is demonstrated from the way they're performed and the way they look. And this is a real thing that happens to a lot of people. this phenomenon of like accelerated aging when you've gone through very traumatic events. If you look at a lot of before and after of people who were in some very bad real world wars, especially like World War One, those poor souls look like they were in the fucking trenches for decades. And there's also, you know, like you look at before and after of people on drugs. There's even been some interesting ones on like before and after of people when they've become like presidents and prime ministers. I think the one of Obama was like very telling, where it's like, yeah, he was in power for 8 years. He looks like he aged like 2 decades doing that job. And then there's even funnier ones like the lead at CD Projekt Red who do Witcher. People have shown how he looks during Witcher 3, and it's like, Jesus, it wasn't that long ago you made the first game. And they seem to have just abandoned that aspect of her character. She looks young now. And like I can only speculate as to why. Did someone look at this and think, oh, people aren't going to understand she's meant to look older and more haggard despite her age? The fact that she's looks like a, you know, kind of like late, probably 30s age woman, but has this, and this is an important thing as well, which I think the remake is also missing out on. Has like the tone and cadence of someone a lot younger. And that's also very much related to people who have gone through like childhood abuse and trauma, where they don't develop as well because, you know, they're kind of robbed of the opportunity to do that, and end up being like closed off, not talking to people and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And
I'm looking
in the
for
making of documentary here, we're gonna play this, but I'm gonna
Is
turn
this
this
the
down a
right
bit.
way?
Yeah.
But if you notice, like
Hard to see
she
with this fog, but there's only the one
has
road.
awkward
Can't miss
pauses. She has a very like
Thanks.
kind of childish tone.
But
Yes?
I think you'd better stay away.
And very like uncomfortable talking to people.
This town.
See what I mean?
There's something wrong with it.
Like it's very much supposed to come off of like something's wrong with her. She for some reason doesn't like talking. Maybe like why, you don't know in this scene. With the implication later on about her story and the abuse from her father, a lot of it's due to the fact that James is like an adult male figure. So even though obviously she's not assuming the same thing, it's you know, plays on her. But also she's someone who shouldn't look as old as she does. And there's an argument of like maybe Silent Hill, with the way it messes with people in time and perception, that's an aspect of why she appears older than she is. But it's meant to be uncomfortable that this character who appears to be like, you know, 30s, maybe older than that, talks like she's young. It doesn't feel right.
I'll be careful.
I'm not lying.
No.
Like, when I think of the way she says that, and I think of the way Laura talks, it's kind of similar, and I think that's on point.
It's just...
And, in the documentary, Salo, the character designer and CGI lead, he also co-wrote the story. We'll get to, hang on, a specific shot back here.
Fog either.
Okay, I got it.
Sorry.
Hang on. Here we go. He talks about specifically giving her these extra age lines. You know, you can see, it's kind of hard to see here, but you see she's got these kind of lines here and here. He directly references this and talks about how he wanted her facial expressions to look uncomfortable. Almost like her face isn't used to doing this.
Lost?
And that's like why she so exaggerates the pose. It's meant to give the idea that something is off with her. And we'll go over to some of the stuff here.
I didn't mean to scare you. I'm kind of lost.
Also, very minor thing, but I know this as well. James sounds very like casual and kind of like friendly and just like, hey, I'm lost. Can you help? Like considering what's going on, that he's come to the town because he thinks he got a letter from his dead wife, and already picks up that there's something wrong with the town.
I'm looking for Silent Hill.
He
You
doesn't.
should stay away. This town, there's something wrong with it.
See, the way that line's delivered, you can hear that someone is trying to replicate that original performance. I don't know, and I'm not going to blame the actors on this because I think the issue here is more voice direction. I don't think the struggling to talk, the uncomfortable with an older person, the fact that she's supposed to kind of talk like she's still a young person developing, I don't think comes across in that line read.
Is it dangerous?
Maybe.
Okay, we'll talk about that a bit as well. This trailer's kind of funny because it if you haven't played Silent Hill 2, this spoils a lot. This feels like a trailer that was put out for people who have played Silent Hill 2.
I'm not lying.
Also, yeah, we have to talk about this that became an infamous meme face. Now, I want to talk about this because I think the issue here is not the issue that a lot of people think it is. And I've talked about this with Clarice as well. Because the way she looks here, like, especially this part, where I compare it to how she looks in this shot, I feel like these look like two different people, you know? And I think what it is that there's something with the way the facial capture technology or the way the models are made, but something somewhere is not working right. And these animations are not applying to these faces properly and are contorting them in a way that is making them look wrong. The best example I give, if you've ever used like a character creator that lets you do really granular changes, like, oh, you can change this slider and it will move like the lip diameter this way, that way, or extend like the cheekbones up, down, in, out, nose ridge, things like that. It looks like that to me. It looks like something is going wrong with the animation where she looks like this in whatever like facial expression the actor was originally doing. But then you look at her here and it doesn't look the same. Obviously, she's very zoomed out there. But like, even if I come into this one, it doesn't look the same. Clarice, you mentioned. Also, I've got to think on this. Someone suggested that I should actually have chat on screen. And I can do that. But I'm going to have to... Oh. I'm going to have to move y'all. Let's see. Okay, you know what I'm going to do? There we go. It's okay. Hey, you'll co-star the show. Ah! I always feel two ways about having chat on screen because when I watch back Twitch VODs or highlight videos, I find chat on screen distracting. But I know that it kind of helps with communicating. The captions you can turn off, Clarice. That's not in my stream. That's a browser extension. If you just click the CC button, it will disable the captions. We'll figure this out another time. We need to make a better overlay. I would probably have the chat above me here, but I can't set that up right now. And I would probably like no. You know, we'll put that there. I think that will work for now. But I think something is wrong. And funny enough, I think what's worth looking at, and I don't think I've got it queued up here, I don't think the facial capture technology was the same in that reveal trailer. In fact, I am convinced that reveal trailer was pre-rendered now. You know, let's find it quick. Give me a sec here. You know, I'm just going to hide this just because you can never control what shows up on YouTube homepage. Oh, look, someone who's excited about the Silent Hill 2 remake. Couldn't be me. Is this the trailer? Yes. Also, it's one of the few trailers that actually is running at 60, this one. But I'm looking at the visuals here now. This is not how the game looks now. This is 100% pre-rendered. I'm convinced now. Because everything we've seen doesn't look as good as this. Like, the hair looks a lot noticeably worse in the stuff they've shown recently. Like, the town kind of mostly looks the same, but, like, the detail on character models, the faces look very different. And granted, I think it's because they've also, like, changed the models a bit. Also, I think there's some scenes. I don't think this scene is actually in the final game, because we've seen some clips of this scene, and it plays out differently. I'm not using the sound right now. But, and also, like, I don't know what was up with they asking the actor to, like, overact and, like, oh, you're gonna look depressed here, and all that shit. Also, I could tell you that the combat looks the same. The combat looks just as janky as this. But, yeah, whatever pre-rendering face model stuff they were doing here, their current actual in-game engine is not capable of this. And also, yeah, like, how weird and fake his hair looks. Like, and I don't think it's just because they've remodeled the face. I think this was a pre-rendered trailer. Because
I was just...
It's okay. I didn't mean...
Like, this is nowhere close to, like, the level of detail, real-time rendering poly count as this. So I think this was just, like, not... Like, when I say pre-rendered, I think it was made in the engine, but I think it's not... The footage is not it running in real time. I think they, like, beefed up the count as high as they could and then rendered it out into a video. Basically how, like, a lot of 3D animation's done.
Need to scare you.
So, let's get back to this. And yeah, and Resident Evil has better, and Resident Evil engine has an issue with hair, and I'm noticing it here too. And you mentioned about the eyebrows here. I think this is the engine again. I think it's because her eyebrows. And look, these are based... We know that these character models are, to a degree, based on how the actors look. Because we've seen the actors, at least for James and Maria. Like, it's their faces, but they are tweaking the models they're making, right? I would have thought, though, you would have, like, done some minor changes to Angela to make her look more like this. But the thing I'm going to bring up about the eyebrows looking weird, and I think what it is because I don't think the eyebrows are using the same hair middleware tech as the eyebrows are. The eyebrows might just literally be textures. Maybe using the, like, layered texture thing, whereas they're doing something with the hair, and it's the same problem that a lot of Resident Evil engine stuff has, where lighting affects hair different, so it looks lighter than it's supposed to be. Like, it ends up looking like a wig. That's actually a problem that a lot of games currently have. You can see it a bit here, where everyone's hair looks like wigs because it doesn't light naturally. They're using these modern techniques that kind of render not individual strands, but, like, you know, parted strands, and are able to do all this physicsy stuff. Right? You think the eyebrows look unnatural? Yeah, it's... The problem is, I don't think we've seen Angela's actress, at least not in, like, an interview or anything. Maybe people have found her and people have looked it up. I want to mention this, by the way. It's a minor thing, but it comes up a couple of times in this trailer, and it also comes up in a new reveal. There are some rooms that don't look like Silent Hill 2. They look like Silent Hill 1. Or more specifically, they kind of look like the movie, where they go into this, like, red metal rust with the gradings aesthetic. And this is, like, the prime example of it. Because I look at this. This is not a room that's in Silent Hill 2. And I'm not saying you can't put new rooms in, but this doesn't look like a room that should be in Silent Hill 2. It almost looks like a homecoming room, if I'm being honest. And that's a little harsh, because it's not a high bar to clear. I do think what we've seen so far is better than the Western attempts. I still don't think it's in the good category. But it also, I think, despite being better, falls for a lot of the same issues, you know?
No.
See what I mean? Like, hang on. This character model here. Looks nothing like this character model. It looks like two different versions of the model. Like, whatever facial capture they're doing didn't, like, expand her cheeks and jawline the same way. Like, her chin looks the same, but somehow her jawline got, like, puffed out in that scene. And I'll be real, I obviously I don't know enough about game development and promotion and working with publishers and partners and all that. I'm shocked that Sony were like, yes, we're going to show this trailer. This was also around the time that they showed that combat trailer. We won't really look at that because there's enough of the combat in the other trailers we can look at. And I think there's issues with those we can point out that people are glossing over.
No. You shouldn't be here.
Yeah, just some combat stuff. Again, there's better trailers to look at the combat stuff, but we'll go through this trailer here. Also, that makes me worry, because that makes me think of Downpour, where the enemies could scream and you had to shake the stick. But we'll have to see how this works.
Tell him I'll be good.
Okay. I want to touch on this. Yeah, they're uncanny. Arguably, the way the CGI cutscenes were animated in the original doesn't look as uncanny. And granted, it's working with, like, simpler models. And it was hand animated. But it was still attempting to look realistic. And still looks better. And I don't think it's the actor's fault. Just something has gone wrong where whatever facial animation they've captured does not work on these models. Or the way they've captured the data, like, is not coming through properly. It's something where you might even need someone to come in and manually touch these up, which is so much work. I just don't know. But I want to mention this dialogue here. And I do have another time code. Let me get it up here. Because I have a bit to say about this as well. We will get to the new stuff as well. So, 3:21. Here we go. So there's this dialogue here. And you run in the room. And you don't really know what's going on. And you're like, what? You know. She's mentioned earlier that she's looking for her mama. And yeah, there's going to be content warning stuff all over this. I probably got to figure out a better way of doing that. But it's Silent Hill 2. Content warning. It deals with themes of, you know, like suicide, terminal illness, like family abuse, sexual abuse, murder, and probably more that I'm not even thinking of. But, well, when I upload the YouTube VOD, I'll make sure that there's, like, warnings, like, in the descriptions from the start. But that's all the dialogue that happens here. And it's very brief and rushed. And in your first playthrough, you don't have a lot of time to connect the dots outside of her saying daddy. And then you see this shit go on. And the thing I noticed about this is this new dialogue, I think, is too on the nose to have her say.
I'll be good, I promise.
Like,
Tell him I'll be good.
I think this is too on the nose. I think this is telling too much. And there's a couple of new lines that really feel like someone looked over this game and thought it was too subtle in places. Oh, there's stuff that people just won't get, and it needs to be kind of explained a bit more.
Please.
But the reason I want to show this is a big thing I've noticed about this boss fight. We don't even need to look at the videos. Like, this is what the boss room looks like. And there is a lot of subtext going on. First off, and we can't really see it, but there's a TV in the bottom corner. So despite the abstract, unnatural look of the room, it's supposed to resemble it's supposed to harken back to a room that she would have been in that would have had a TV. But it's, it's a small enclosed area. It's got this weird fleshy look, and it's got these pistons, these like weird foreign objects pulsing in and out. And there's, when you're playing this the first time, a lot of this subtext you might not even get because you're just focusing on the combat. You're just being freaked out. You're seeing this weird abstract imagery. You don't know what's going on, and a lot of that's intentional. A lot of the horror of Silent Hill, even in Silent Hill 2 to a degree, though Silent Hill 1 and 3 and 4 do it more so, hello Minnie, is that it's someone else's nightmare. It's not stuff that you or the character is familiar with. It's stuff that's alien to you. In Silent Hill 1, it's everything tied to Alessa and her fears and her life. And in Silent Hill 3, it's about Claudia and her relationship to Alessa. A lot of people think it's coming from Heather, and a lot of it applies to Heather's character, but she's not the one actually having her subconscious manifested. It's Claudia, and the game like straight up tells you. And then in Silent Hill 4, it's Walter. And Silent Hill 2 is mostly James, but you do cross into the other characters' manifestations, and this is one of it, where you cross into Angela's. You also cross into Eddie's a couple of times. Come here, Minnie, if you're gonna come over. There you go. Silly girl. Sometimes when I'm streaming, she's just like, oh, you're in the chair. But if you look at this reveal trailer, we can kind of see something that vaguely looks like it in this room. But this boss arena room looks completely different. I'm actually going to slow this footage down, because we don't get a very long look at it. So we're going to go very short. I'll say that the boss itself looks very accurate, but this, again, especially the fan motif, is a very Silent Hill 1 room. What it is, and seeing the Pyramid Head boss fight, and we'll talk about that fucking boss fight. They've made the rooms bigger because the new combat system doesn't work in the original claustrophobic level design. Which is funny, because in some cases they've kept that level design and it actually seems to fuck with the new combat. So yes, they've made this like extra room. It looks like you start out in something that vaguely resembles the original room, and then you break through this wall and you end up in this Silent Hill 1 room. And like, they've kind of messed around with things. And the problem is that subtext, like you're fighting inside of this living flesh room, doesn't quite work if you immediately break out the room and you fight in this rusted industrial like nightmare factory with pipes on the wall and fans and this fucking gear thing. What does this gear have to do with Angela? Like, what does this have to do with the fact that her father abused her in a way that I'm not going to say on stream, but you can kind of pick up from the enemy design here? Like, there's no subtext in that. That's just the designer saying, oh, that would look cool. That's a Silent Hill thing to do. And again, it's like, what was the need for the change here aesthetically? If you couldn't have done, the original combat in the original room, then yeah, make it bigger, even if that fought against it. And look, I don't know if it's true. I don't know if we'll ever find this out. Is it like a movie reel? No, it seems to be like more mechanical. Like one you would see on like it's a literal gear. So you can see the little teeth. Well, no, this is not a film reel. I know where you're seeing that, but this is not a film reel. This is just a cog. It looks more like one you would see on an old steam train, actually. But I think it's pretty obvious, especially if you look at bloopers, and it's always blooper, but I always say blooper because blooper is such a weird thing to say. I am fairly convinced that the over-shoulder camera and a lot of ways that they've tried to make this look like it could be made by the same people who worked on the Resident Evil remakes. I think that was a Konami mandate. I think when they were hired for this, they were like, look, those are selling really well. Those are selling millions, in some cases more than the original. It's got to be over the shoulder. It's got to look like it plays like that game, even though it actually, when you watch the gameplay, it doesn't look like it plays like that game, and we'll get into that. And once you do that, once you have the camera, you know, like shoulder level, you can't have the rooms be small anymore. Previously, the camera was above you. You could move it around still in a lot of rooms. You can't in this room. This room, the camera is fixed because the fact the TV's here is kind of supposed to be a reveal. And also, they want you to see this. They very specifically needed this camera angle. You know, that you're this like weird spectator and you're seeing Angela here just like completely cramped up and almost in like a fetal position. But because of that having to change it, which I still think was a mistake, I just don't think Silent Hill, there we go, and that's the end of this trailer. Minnie, what are you planning to do? You literally were about to fall on the floor there. Hang on. Oh, Clara, she'd been up. Wasn't Silent Hill created because of Resident Evil? Yes and no. It was commissioned by Konami. Sorry, I just hit the mic. Because they wanted a competitor to Resident Evil. But it's very obvious by the way it was made and the way it plays that the development team weren't really concerned with that. Outside of it being survival horror, and mechanically it's a very different survival horror because you don't have a limited inventory room. You move like throughout a lot of different locations you don't go back to. They just wanted to do their own thing within like the basic confines of a Resident Evil-ish survival horror game. But that's our first trailer. And let me just double check and see if there was anything else I wanted to mention. Nope, that's it. Okay. Okay, so that's that trailer. And now we've got to look at this one. This was the gameplay trailer from 2 months ago. And I don't have as much to say about this. Though... There's a specific quote here that I really want to highlight. Fucking... I don't like to get angry about stuff like this. And it's kind of why being a Silent Hill fan sucks, because they just won't let this fucking series die, and they keep fucking treading on the memory of it while telling fans that no, we are continuing the legacy. Faithfully remade in the original vision, and we've already seen that's not true. That when this came out, this was not true. If it was made in the original vision, you would have kept the fucking camera system that used cinematography to imply storytelling and tone and communicate to the player without saying anything. And you didn't keep that because you were chasing after the success of Resident Evil, even though Silent Hill isn't really anything like Resident Evil, so you shouldn't chase after its success. You should stand apart from it like Silent Hill originally did. But it's such a bold claim, especially because, and I really have to point this out, we have 2 of the original 50 developers involved. We don't even have the main authorities. We have Akira Yamaoka, and this is just to be clear, this is not me bashing on anyone's work here. Akira Yamaoka you know, amazing composer, but he is just the composer on these games. And even when he ended up becoming director and producer, he openly admitted that he was like not really involved in those aspects, and he just kind of went off on his own and did the music and wasn't involved in the story or the direction. And Masahiro Ito, who was creature design and art director, and you know, and again, amazing at his job, and their input is important. But the problem is them two alone didn't make Silent Hill 2. Silent Hill 2 was made, it was circumstance. It was a team and collective of the time. I'm bad with all the names, but we don't have the director. We don't have the producer Imamura. We don't have Sato, who was doing the character designs, the CGI cutscenes, and co-wrote the story. We don't have Owaku, who was the lead writer. We don't have most of the people who were actually, you know, telling the original story. Like, and so it just feels very insulting to, like, at least for me, it feels like it's some people's intelligence to say, like, look, we have these two, that should be enough. Oh, we're doing the original vision. Even though there's this stuff that's different, don't worry. It's not different. It's the original vision. It's just that the things we're changing weren't part of the original vision, or they didn't matter, or they were malleable. Even though changing small aspects as simple as the aesthetics of a puzzle, the slight redesign of a character's outfit, the way a character talks, the way the character's face looks, the way the game plays, like the way you engage with enemies in combat, the way you visually see the game through the camera system, like all those aspects work together to do the storytelling. And you can't change all those assets and claim that you're matching the original vision. Like, it's just insulting. It's just like, what you're seeing, you're wrong. All right. Well, we'll talk about that in a bit, but there's a better shot.
Take me there again someday.
We could talk about it.
But you never did.
But I wanted to highlight this one, I think, because I think some of the dodgy looking combat. Okay, I think for this one, I'm actually going to... Okay, no, not yet.
Really alive?
Okay. So yeah, we can start off from the beginning here. I'll give credit. Minnie. We're going to give credit. This is the way she's got me holding her, by the way. She's not moaning or anything. She's just like, yeah, that's nice. Okay, Minnie. But I do think that Blooper have very talented environmental artists. I don't think they're doing a bad job. I don't know if they're always hitting the original aesthetic and art style, but also there's someone who, when it comes to like art style changes, that's not an environment that, like, the person putting the game together. But this is the highlight of the thing I referenced earlier, but want to go into more, is that the fog can't be as close. It can't be as oppressive and claustrophobic as before, because with this new camera system, the fog would be like covering this car even. It would be up to here. And you would only be able to see maybe like 2-3 meters in front of you. And for a camera that is like at head level, that's not good. So you have to do this. But also, it changes a lot of the same feeling. Also, I'm noticing there's kind of, like, it's, you know, there's quite what would you call this? But how the fog actually goes back to here. It just like very slowly changes over time. So the draw distance is actually pretty high here. And I think even that, like, you know, the fact we can even see these trees here is different. And again, if you're doing this camera system, you kind of don't have a choice. You need to to change things. Hang on, Minnie. Let me see if I can hold you better. The problem is, I need an arm free, Minnie, because I'm doing stuff with my mouse, you know? And you're not going to help with that, are you? No. So you're just going to have to stay there. Okay. Hopefully my arm can keep her held for a while here. It's not bad looking fog by any means. But it's something I want to know. And also, I'm going to say it here. I'm anti video game protagonists talking out loud to themselves. It's immersion breaking. It flies in the face of how players are supposed to engage with an interactive medium, which is to take on the role of the character they're playing as. But I will say that the new stuff they've been showing doesn't really seem to have it. So maybe there's only a couple of times where this happens. I'm noticing as well, and we'll talk about it in a later thing, I don't know if examine text is in this game anymore. You know, like when you would press X on something and you would get, like, James's take on the situation. I think they've just taken that out. But, yes, James in this preview kind of talks to himself quite a bit, but if you watch the longer preview, which we'll get to, we won't watch the whole thing because it's very long. And I'm going to skim around this one because, again, it's very long, but I just want to talk about this bit. He doesn't constantly talk to himself. He doesn't say, oh, this is what I should do. I should go to the hospital. I should go look for Mary. Oh, is that a radio? You know, like, it seems to be quite in line with how much James talked in the original. Now, I'm going to talk about this. So, two things with this cutscene. A, for some reason, they've just moved where the first combat encounter happens. And again, they used a bigger open space because of the way the combat is. And I get that. But I don't know why they couldn't have put it in a tunnel still. And why they chose to put it in this house again. Interesting point about the radio, by the way. I didn't pick up on this at first. In the original, you could hear, like, Mary saying stuff. It wasn't clear. And, no, I will say, once you've played the game a couple of times, you can figure out what she was saying. Oh, Minnie. How are you so cozy with this pose I'm holding you in? It's not comfortable at all. Oh, dear. She probably wants to sit on my desk, but she's not supposed to. You're not supposed to sit on my desk, Minnie. But I don't... Like, there's maybe a voice coming through, but you can't pick up any words. Also, this has been talked about a bit. They've redesigned the line figures here. They've kind of gone way more edgy and gory, putting all this, like, metal shit on them, which I don't think was necessary. But yeah, go. This is already stuff I'm not into combat-wise. Fucking grab attacks and... Now, in an earlier combat trailer, there were QuickTime events on these. People think they've probably been removed. I still have a sneaking suspicion that they've just disabled the button prompts. They're still in the game, they're just not showing the button prompts. But we'll see. Maybe they did literally just take them out because they realized people did not want them. But I want to just talk about, and I'm going to slow it down again, but not as slow, how jerky this combat looks. How James will just do an animation, and then as soon as you would start another animation, he'll snap. You can, like, see the snap points where, look, you see it? You see that fucking jump? It happened, like, right there. Like, every time you hit an action, you see the model move and go like, Hup! Like that. It teleports into the new poses. It looks really amateurish to me. And even if you don't slow it down as much as I'm slowing it down here, I think it's visibly noticeable. I think the animations look really unnatural, especially this one. This, like, hit them on the floor with the board animation looks so goofy. Look at it. It just looks bad. And I can't believe... Oh, are you moving now, Minnie? Here you go. Ugh. There is stomping, Clarice. It's just for some reason they didn't show it there. I get the feeling they might have made it so that the stomp isn't required to kill enemies that are lying down. Granted, you could also do it with guns, but it took longer and was, wasted ammo. Mini, no, not the desk. There's stuff on the desk. Where can you go? Do I have to put more stuff on the desk? There you go. Anyway, let's change my slowdown there, because there's worse stuff than that to talk about. But again, I don't know why anyone looked at this. Also, I gotta mention this. People fucking started the stupidest rumor that James's reflection in the windows was meant to look like Pyramid Head. It's like, no, mate, that's just a really bad reflection tech. Someone pointed up a point, and I kind of agree with it to an extent, and I'm curious about it. Every time you pick up an item, it does this, like, examine in real time thing. I'm curious if it happens every time you pick up ammo or a health drink, or if it just happens the first time. But it kind of brings up the issue that and we haven't seen this in any of the gameplay demonstrations. I don't know. I swear that he talks more in this trailer than he does the new one. So maybe they changed that as well. And yeah, here's more the examining stuff. But here we go. Here's the stuff I want to get to. But I don't know if you can use items, change equipment, any of that stuff by pausing the game. Like, Resident Evil 2 Remake added being able to put things into quick slots, but you could still pause the game to heal, reload guns, change weapons, move items, and all that. I get the impression that they just don't let you do that here. And I think that's a downgrade. I see this fascination that some games do with the idea of, like, oh, everything you do happens in real time, it never pauses, and it's like, that doesn't always work. That doesn't always improve a game. And yeah, there's also the issue of, like, when you pick up a health drink, does the action pause or not? And probably not, right? But here we go. we've got to talk about it, right? For some reason they redesigned Maria. And why? I'm gonna call it out. There's, fucking, this is gamer discourse right now. It's a fucking pain, because every time something's wrong, if you criticize something, just like everything people don't like now, instantly people just will label it, and they'll talk about wokeness and DI, and it's just fucking exhausting. Like, people shut up. No one fucking cares outside of your echo chamber. This like, artificial outrage, like. But I want to talk about it. It's weird. I don't know why they felt the need to do this, where they felt the need to kind of make her look more modest. I don't know if that was the intent, because in some ways she's still showing a lot of skin. She still has the opaque, I think that's the right term, but you can still see through her leggings. She has, like, a lot of her upper torso exposed, though it's more because she has a lower bust line now. In fact, if you look at her Silent Hill 2 design, you can see that she actually, like, that's not the official model. Hang on. You can see that her bust line was actually higher. But her intentionally seductress design, the fact that she is, similar in appearance to Mary, but she's meant to, she doesn't have the same face, she doesn't dress the same, she doesn't act the same, and her, like, literal backstory is implied to be that she works in a strip club. Like, she is meant to be like a sexual character. And this redesign, also I could close this now, I don't think I need that, feels like it feels like they've tried to change some part of her design where she's got like a more casual outfit. One thing I do notice is that I originally thought that the heart tattoo, which is depending on if you notice it or not, a not very subtle implication about rebirth, like the whole thing with butterflies and people reborn and things like that. But I realized it's on her chest now. It's just really hard to see because we haven't had like too many close-ups. Minnie, stop climbing on the desk. Where can you sit? There's no room. My mouse is here. The keyboard's here. Oh, sorry, folks. But the feeling isn't the same. It doesn't give off the same kind of. Hang on. Sorry. Minnie, are you okay? You look like you were about to throw up. Sorry, but yeah. I originally thought it's just they've moved it. I originally thought that tattoo wasn't there. It turns out they've just moved it. Okay, you okay now, Minnie? Sorry, she looked like she was about to fucking like cough up on my desk, but she seems to have calmed down. I don't know what's up with her. It's just she wants to sit on the desk right now, but she's not. There's no room on the desk, Minnie, and you can't just make room by just coming over. Okay. Use the bed. The whole bed's here. But, like, it makes me wonder if the whole backstory that she works in Heaven's Night, like, if they've just taken it out. I can't imagine that's it. But it's weird. But also, I'm going to be frank, like, her personality feels different as well.
Let's look around. We
haven't had too many scenes of her. But the scenes we've got, she doesn't come off like very flirty and assertive.
This place feels so empty. More than the other places we've been.
That's interesting dialogue, because this is the first place you really go with Maria. She doesn't go into the bowling alley with you, because she hates bowling. No, the bigger reason is that because, being that she's a manifestation of James, she shouldn't be able to be around other people, and I have something to say about that. But the only other place you go with her in the base game is she goes into the strip club, and in Born from a Wish, she starts there. And it is empty there. So it's a weird line. But this is mostly just like wandering around stuff. There's not too much to say here. Like, her AI seems fine, and it's interesting to see that she just kind of will do her own thing and look at stuff. But there's not too much to mention there. Here we go. There's something majorly wrong with this scene.
Laura.
Okay. There is a rule in the original Silent Hill 2 that Maria never is around other people other than James. No one sees her, no one mentions her. Straight up, James does not even bring her up, which I think is an intentional thing as well, to reinforce the idea that she only exists around him. But not only is she in this scene,
It's okay. We don't want to hurt you.
she tries to talk to Laura as well. And that, I think, is not right. I don't think that's how it should be. And I think if you were a big fan of Silent Hill 2, I thought you would have picked this up. That this is like a key role with her character. But for some reason, they just like ignored that. And I don't know why. But this is my point about this, where it's previewed kind of positively, and if you look at just basic trailers and you don't go this depth into it, it looks fine. It doesn't look amazing, but it looks fine. But all these little bits, like all this intentional subtext and subtlety, and storytelling that's implied, how much of it is just being like fiddled with? Just little bits that someone, like various people working on this, either intentional and I'm gonna bet unintentional, saw as things that could be changed, and Mal like just, oh, if this detail changes, it doesn't really matter, because like the overall story is that James thinks his dead wife sent him a letter when actually, you know, he's the murderer. And like I said, there's spoilers here, so spoilers. I need some water, by the way. When it comes to enemy redesigns, I don't know. I almost get the impression that Masahiro Ito is involved, but I don't know how much authority he has and how much he can actually influence. Yeah, he talks to himself way more in this. Maybe someone actually said something. But yeah, let's look at some more janky combat. You see what I mean? Like, it looks like they've also, like, manually sped up animations. Here, we'll slow it down a bit again. Just a tiny bit. Here we go. Oh, there we go. Here's the shit that bugs me. Watch it. He's got the handgun. That's not a handgun. Yeah, I'm going to do frame advance. Look. Pipe, handgun. This is me using frame advance. You see, handgun, it's pipe. Handgun, pipe. This is not me skipping like a whole second. This is one frame in the video I'm doing here. There is no weapon swap animation in this game. Is my reaction to it. I'm stunned silence. And like, I'm not seeing anyone who did these previews mentioning that. Did they not get to the handgun? Are they just playing in an environment where seeing this janky animation stuff doesn't come through? But yeah, like, it, like, the animation quality, and I made a joke about this, that this combat looks about as good as the combat in the first Saw game, which is not high praise. It looks serviceable, but tonally, I think it's way off, because I think it's too visceral. It's, like, quite violent and visceral, and people pointed out it looks quite similar to Last of Us. And I think that's fair. Like, they're being grabbed, like, the fact that enemies have these, like, grab mechanics, having the dodge, James having, like, power moves and counters. Also, yep, there's another example of him, like, instantly swapping to the... This one's interesting. It looks like there's a swap animation, but it's not. It's just that he has to draw the gun, you know? Like, you know, and hey, it's fine to show that, hey, if you hit enemies in the leg, they'll go down. But I still think that's maybe too much. There's a power hit there. And then we get... Here's that... Look, you see him fucking warp into the ground animation here? Like, watch, look. Whoop! It looks bad. And you've asked about, oh, does it have work in progress? Apparently the preview, like, because they put out footage of the preview, it still looks like this. And this game's supposed to be out in 2 months. Here, let's, And also, yeah, this overhead swing looks terrible. It doesn't look like he's trying to hurt them. It just looks like he's going, whoop, whoop. And then, yeah, this is just some cutscene stuff. Here's getting the shotgun. But the bit I want to show... Also, I think that there is showing that they'll sometimes take camera control away from the player. Oh, do you see visible damage on the nurse when they're shot? Because I don't really. I don't think there is visible damage on the enemies, but maybe I'm just not noticing it. Also, I don't know if it's just the way the shooting is designed, but any footage they've put out, whoever's doing the shooting can't fucking aim for shit. But here we go. I'm gonna slow this down again. Just you know, because it's noticeable. I'm noticing it, but I'm slowing it down just for like viewer, for the viewer's sake. Shotgun, pipe. Who is looking at this and going like, "Oh yeah, this is gonna be pretty good actually"? Like that? No, that looks fucking terrible. I shouldn't be able to frame advance and go shotgun, 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 pipe. Like, it is literally just when you hit the melee button, your gun turns into a pipe. Or the wooden board. That's, like, I think that's how this game works. I think melee weapons are not a separate weapon. I think there is a melee button and a gun button. But yeah, I don't think there is any sort of like damage model on the enemies. That doesn't really bother me too much. There you go, there's the stomp. And there's James snapping into it again. Also, just gonna highlight this. No working mirror. Which, considering this is supposed to be like a PlayStation 5 exclusive game. Oh, can I say, I guess they don't want to delay? Look, Blooper, I don't think were that prestigious of a studio to begin with. I think most of their games are mediocre. I don't think they are of a level to do this kind of game to this, like, you know, quote, AAA PlayStation 5 standard. I don't think they were ever equipped to do this. I don't think they have the manpower, the resources. I don't think they have the technical knowledge or history. If you look at their other games, they've never made anything that's like trying to hit this graphical quality. Like the medium certainly is not comparable, and like granted, like the environment is like a lot better than their previous stuff. I don't think there's much more to show here.
Laura,
We'll
why do you keep running away from me?
we'll go through this cutscene.
And how do you know about Mary?
But again, I think the main thing you get from this is just
Mary's my friend.
the face models are not bad, but the facial animations just don't look right.
Laura, I'm sorry, I didn't mean.
You think they'd be showing off the puzzles? That's what the new gameplay trailer does.
I can't let you just run around this place. You might get hurt.
Hurt by what?
Look, just stay with me, okay? This is no place for a kid.
Fine. But there's something I gotta get.
Also, this bothers me because this implies the way they rewrote this implies that she always planned on trapping
It's
James in this room.
What is it?
A letter. For Mary.
What?
I hid it.
But yeah, I think, like, yes, her facial animation sometimes looks fine and sometimes looks bad. But this is the room that she locks James in because James called her a liar, right? But you instantly come out the room and she's like, oh, okay, I will follow you, but you have to, like she planned the whole thing. But in the original, she suddenly comes up with the plan once you, like, walk with her a couple of steps. But that's it for that trailer. I don't think there's anything else to really show there. It's just, like, the start of the boss fight, and you don't really see any of it.
See a fart face.
Yeah, it's... I get the feeling that, like, they mess with the models too much, or just the way their, like, animation tech works. But I can't moan about the voice act. I don't think her voice acting there's anything really to criticize there. I'll say that for her. But this is the big one. And we've got two things to look at. So this is both the new gameplay, it's also got that previous gameplay in here, but we're gonna watch the story trailer first. Hang on, let me get to the... There we go. Oh. Okay. Strap in, because this is the long one. We've got a lot to talk about now. So, I haven't got it up, but because I want to show the direct scenes. I believe this recent story trailer, though it's not one-to-one, I believe it was edited to look very similar to the E3 CGI trailer. And if you want to watch it, you can actually watch it when you leave Silent Hill 2 at the start screen. It actually plays this, which is funny because it does have spoilers in it. That's just always how it's been.
Honey.
Okay. So, the main thing that was showcased in this trailer, there's two things showcased. They show Eddie, but they don't show much of him. And we'll talk about him in a bit. But the main thing they show is one of the most pivotal scenes in Silent Hill 2. And it's the Maria prison scene. So this is a scene that you get to after you've seen Maria die in front of you. Where weird stuff has started to happen to her. She talks about knowing things that she shouldn't know, that she doesn't know Laura, but for some reason she feels connected to her. She starts to like randomly get sick and then disappear and then reappear in other rooms and then gets chased by Pyramid Head and killed, right? And you come into this random room in this like very abstract non-Euclidean area that's even further underground. You've like jumped like miles into impossible space at this point. And we're gonna watch the original cutscene first, actually. 3:13. Oh, my time code is a little off. Hang on, there we go.
You're alive!
So we will be seeing a little bit extra because some of this stuff isn't shown in the trailer, but we're just going to watch this whole scene here.
I thought that thing killed you. Are you hurt bad?
Okay, so what I'm actually going to do first, I realize what I should do first is we need to see the scene where James first meets Maria, and you need to hear the way she talks. There is, in one of the trailers, you do see the start of this. You see a tiny, tiny bit of this scene. But they haven't shown the full scene. But I want you to note Maria's voice and personality.
No, you're not.
Do I look like your girlfriend?
No, my late wife. I can't believe it. You could be her twin. Your face, your voice, just your hair and clothes are different.
My name is Maria. I don't look like a ghost, do I? See? Feel how warm I am?
You're really not Mary.
I told you, I'm Maria.
Sorry. I was confused.
Where are you going?
Oh yeah, they moved where the scene happens.
Oh, Mary, have you seen...
I think there is a gazebo in this park. I don't know why they moved the scene over there. I guess just they thought this was a weird setting for it.
Didn't you say she died?
Oh yeah, 3 years ago.
Also, that's a very important thing, that he even forgets his own backstory. Because, you know, spoilers, it's not true.
But I got a letter from her. She says she was waiting in our...
But you notice Maria has a very playful but assertive tone and way of speaking. Like, she's instantly, you know, when James is like freaking out and like, oh my god, I've seen someone who looks almost like my dead wife, and James is kind of freaking out, she immediately grabs his hand and puts it like in the middle of his chest, like here, of her chest, and it's like, look, touch, feel I'm real, I, you know, sense. And also if you play Born from Wish, you'll notice as well that she has this like weird complex where she wants to be around people, she wants to be accepted, and it's kind of, I don't know if it's been fully discussed, but I think the implication there is that because she's manifested as a coping mechanism for James. She subconsciously wants to fulfill him. She wants to like be with him, make him happy, and spend time with him. And when you start Born from Wish, she doesn't fully understand it. She just has this like vague urge.
And that's here? Anyway, I haven't seen her. Is this your only special place?
But you know, you can hear her, the way she talks her cadence, and I've already shown some of the way she talks in the remake, and she doesn't really have this tone. She's very just kind of like
Well, there's the hotel
just a
too, I guess.
person. She doesn't
The one on the lake?
seem special or unique or like exhibiting
Hotel?
this
Yeah, it's
tone.
still there. So the hotel was your special place.
And like, yeah,
huh?
this is a great
I'll bet
example it was.
Don't get so mad. I was just joking. Anyway, it's not that way. It's this way.
So, we've seen some of that, right? And then we're gonna go to this scene. It's actually it's better that I do it this way around, so you hear how Maria talks and acts. You know, here's how she talks. This is
You're
her
alive.
personality, her cadence.
Maria, I thought that thing killed you. Are you hurt bad?
Not at all silly.
So you could tell that's Maria's voice.
Maria? That thing, it stabbed you. There was blood everywhere.
I'm kind of sad we didn't get to see this part of the
What do you
scene.
mean?
It chased us to the elevator, and then
James, what are you talking about?
just before.
And if you've noticed, she's already started to change how she
Don't
talks.
you remember?
Here we go. Here's the big pivotal thing, though.
James, honey, did something happen to you? After we got separated in that...
Because this is, I forget her full name. It's like Monica Taylor something. I believe that's her name. The voice actress. She did play both roles in the original. But you can tell she is not talking like herself anymore. She has a different tone of voice. It's higher pitched. It's light and airy. She talks very familiar. She's talking about stuff she shouldn't know about. Like, listen to the way she talks.
Are you confusing me with someone else? You were always so forgetful. Remember that time in the hotel?
Maria?
You said you took everything, but you forgot that videotape we made. I wonder if it's still there.
How do you know about that? Aren't you
And
Maria?
then, listen.
I'm not your Mary.
Like,
So,
that's
you're Maria.
this scene is so good. How subtly she goes from acting like familiar and light and friendly, and then suddenly just he says something and suddenly she talks completely different and has that like assertive like tone again, and the voice like completely drops to like a lower register.
I am. If you want me to be.
And like, yeah, see, she makes herself sound like Mary, saying, "Oh, I'm Mary, but I'll be Maria."
All I want from you is an answer.
And then here's the big turn.
It doesn't matter who I am.
So I mean, like, listen to that
I'm here
line.
for you, James. See? I'm real.
Like, she's supposed to sound like so now she's fully turned back into Maria.
Don't you want to touch me?
I don't know.
And like instantly is already going to flirting, and just like even more overtly, and the fact like she's in this room that's all that's in there is a bed. We're gonna listen to the remake.
After we got separated in that long hallway? Are you confusing me with someone else?
She sounds really monotone and disinterested. Maybe not fully monotone, she sounds disinterested. Like, she doesn't like who she's talking to, even though, like, she's meant to be sounding like Mary.
You were always so forgetful. Remember that time in the hotel?
Is it too nitpicky to point out the pose? Maybe. You know, because they're doing motion, like it's, you know, trying to match motion capture 1-to-1.
Are you taping again? Come on. I don't know why, but I
Also, people have pointed out that like the rearrangement of the song here is like a lot more metal. But this is a trailer song, so we'd have to see how the final music sounds.
In my restless dreams, I see that town.
See, like you can hear the way Mary is played here.
Again someday.
And then we're gonna hear
But you never did.
some of Maria lines.
I'm alone there now. In our special place.
I need to skip around actually.
You just run around this place. You might get hurt.
Hurt by what?
This place is different from what our...
Hang on.
Yeah, you're right.
Where is it?
You said you took everything.
There we go.
But you forgot that videotape we made.
See what I mean? She's got this like, you forgot that videotape we made cadence. Like she's trying to sound spooky. It's really weird. I don't know what her performance is, but like she's supposed to sound like Mary there.
Aren't you Maria?
I'm not your Mary.
See what I mean? Like she says that line in the same way that she says the Mary lines. But it's supposed to be creepy because she's not acting creepy. That she's acting like nothing's wrong. That she's not in this weird situation.
You are Maria.
Whereas she's playing...
Yeah. If you want me to be.
The voice direction seems to have completely ignored the, like, separate personality and speaking voices. Despite the fact that in the original, James says they have different voices. He says you don't sound like Mary. So when you get to this scene and you hear Mary's voice, and granted, when you immediately see the scene for the first time, you're not that familiar with Mary's voice. So it's the fact when the player first comes into the scene, it's supposed to not sound right. You come in, you go like, why does this sound like completely different? This is not the way she talks. And then you get James's reaction communicates to the player like, oh.
You see it too?
Also, people pointed out like the way Angela says this
For
line.
me, it's always like this.
It's not as good as the original. But the final Maria lines here.
Doesn't matter who I am.
I am here for you, James.
See, the way she talks as Maria sounds like they sound the same.
I'm real.
Look, fingers crossed, not that like them fixing that part would fix all the other issues with the gameplay and the presentation, but maybe it's a different take just for the trailer, where they didn't want to do the really jarring separate voices thing. And that's me playing devil's advocate there. But if that is the case, that's a weird fucking choice. Because you're showcasing how you haven't done the scene right. Like, why would you show it that way? So I can't imagine. Like, you've heard those lines there. And I probably should have used a separate video.
After we got separated in that long hallway.
See, that voice there is supposed to be Maria.
Are you confusing me with someone else?
And she's supposed to turn into Mary when she laughs here.
You were always so forgetful. Remember that time in the hotel?
But she doesn't talk any different.
I don't know why, but I just love it here.
Like, it's weird, because in this flashback, she sounds different.
It's so peaceful.
They actually gave her a different...
In my restless dreams, I see that.
But this line doesn't. This line sounds like how she plays Maria. So okay, so some other stuff in this trailer. So Claire says, I think Mary's face looks uncanny now when she turns around. Yeah, again, something is wrong with their facial capture to model pipeline. And I can't say exactly what it is because you'd have to be technically involved or know enough about how this technology works to pinpoint it. But either they've captured the faces wrong, or they're implementing them wrong, or it's something wrong with the models. And yeah, I do agree that Mary, when she turns around in the video, like it doesn't look good. It looks, you know, the facial animation stuff that Capcom's been doing in the RE engine for like 5+ years now looks leagues better than this.
You promised you'd take me there again someday. But you
Also, yeah, like fog is like really light here, but I think this is just for the trailer because in gameplay it doesn't look quite the same.
I'm alone there now, in our special place.
Just put the gun to their head.
Okay, so a lot has been said about Eddie here. And I'm going to say with Eddie, I have some mixed feelings. I don't think the performance is bad. I actually think the performance is probably the closest to the original performance. Which I'm glad, because I think a lot of people think it's like goofy and silly, and it's not. I think they just forget that like he's supposed to be a childish character. Like the fact that, you know, what's the thing that everyone says about Eddie in Silent Hill 2? Like he looks like he's like an adult wearing kids' clothes. I'm pretty sure that's on purpose, because he has like a very immature outlook on life. You know, like when you hear him talk about running away because he got scared, and you know the way he denies killing someone, he says it like a child who's been caught stealing. I think the actor's doing well. I do think it's weird that they've made him like a lot over, like he's way more overweight here. I didn't get any time codes for Eddie, but let me see if I can find one. Because I think I remember where that scene is. I think that scene is in the prison. No, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's earlier than the prison. It's not in the hospital. You don't see Eddie in the hospital. Let's see. Also, we'll see it a bit later. Hang on, I'll go back a bit. Look at this image again. Where is it? Okay, no, not this image. Okay. Oh yeah, there he is.
He had it coming too.
Eddie?
Okay, so I've got to go back a little bit. Because they use lines from both the early part of the trailer and also
Being a person ain't no big deal.
like Eddie's the whole thing with Eddie's character is like the other characters, you know, they have agency, they're real people. Don't get it fucking twisted. There's always people who start a headcanon that no it was all a dream and none of the other people are real. It's like, nope, the developers have said that's not fucking true. Stop that shit. But they are meant to reflect off of James. Like, the whatever dark parts of them brought them together, and they are supposed to, like, bounce off of each other. Like, obviously, outside of the fiction of the world, they're written because they complement each other. And they're supposed to be different conclusions to their guilt and horror they're seeing. Angela takes a very dark conclusion to her pain, to the guilt, because the whole thing with her is everyone here is killed, Eddie, to a different extent, we'll get to that. But even Angela, the whole thing is that she killed her dad and ran to Silent Hill because she believes her mum lives here somewhere, and that comes up in her dialogue and scenes and stuff. And the thing that she killed her dad is actually kind of missable. You have to find a newspaper that mentions like someone, and you have to put the pieces together because that's a very Silent Hill thing. They give you the pieces, but they tell you to put shit together. But you know, she takes this dark conclusion where she is not able to escape her guilt. She sees that the things happening to her are justified. She sees herself in the wrong, which she shouldn't, but like that is, she is so troubled, and it's supposed to reflect, and you know, with one of the endings, James can go that way, and a lot of that ending is involves, you have to do stuff that involves like how her journey's been going, and like examine items that you get from her and some other stuff. But she takes like the pure nihilistic, like black pill, no hope conclusion to the stuff that she's going through. And Eddie goes in the opposite direction, where he completely ignores his guilt. And in fact, feels no guilt by the end, and starts to feel justified in his dark actions. And almost like the manifested horrors he's seen are empowering him. And he starts to go on this dark tone. The whole point of like the different characters is, you know, it's commentary on dealing with your trauma, with your guilt. And the way Eddie and Angela deal with it is not supposed, you know, they're not as aspirational. They don't deal with it, their problems, and that's their whole thing. There's a bit of it. But you can see they've made him a lot bigger. Now, it's never, I don't think it's ever been fully confirmed. And I don't think it matters too much, but Eddie's whole thing is that, and you see it in his room, and I'm curious actually if they show it in this playthrough. Let's see. Sorry, I got some time codes ahead of time, but I should have got some more. Here we go. Let me see if they show it in this playthrough. This is actually missable because you have to go... Oh, no, they don't. So, you can... When you enter this room, right, with Eddie, the game teleports you to the bathroom, and then when you're done, it teleports you out the room. Look. He's in the next room adjacent. If you go into that room, there is a ton of American football posters and paraphernalia, and it's all vandalized and damaged, like someone crossing out faces and taking their anger out on it. And Eddie later talks about like a potential coach or football player. He's like, oh, he will have trouble playing ball on that knee, is one of his lines he says later. Also, I'm curious about that, if I can remember where it is. Oh yeah, he does have a... Yeah, he has a Magnum in the original. It's been a while. But the implication is that he had some involvement with an American football team. I get the implication that he was maybe supposed to be in college. Like, even though, like, you know, you've mentioned canon, he's supposed to be 23. I think he's still supposed to be involved in, like, a university or a college. And seems to have some disdain for, like, possibly for, like, trying to play American football and not being allowed. Or just some, like, some, you know, negative experience he had with people who do. It's never fully elaborated on. But this interpretation of the character kind of completely kills the idea that he was ever interested in the sport. And kind of makes you think, like, why would he be involved even? And, again, I don't know if the change is good or bad, but it's like, but why was this change felt necessary? People have commented like it makes him seem a bit more monstrous, and I agree that you could see that, but also that's again very on the nose. You're kind of fucking spelling it out, aren't you? Also, I find it weird that they've added like he's got cold breath in this room, because this is not the freezer room. This is this like cafeteria room he's in.
The way they looked at you.
But for some reason, they're just like really cold in this room. I guess because they were like, oh, you know, like fog breath, that's creepy. But again, like, why was the change felt necessary? Why did someone look at that scene and go like, hey, this needs change in the way this plays?
You should see your face, T.
But I think at least the way he's performed, I don't really have any problems with it. Like, again, we have so little to go off. We maybe have like 10 seconds. But I do think what they've shown is good, but I do agree that they've kind of made him look a bit too old. Like, they've de-aged Angela, but then they've aged Eddie or something. It's weird. But now we got to get to the real meat and potatoes. We've got the gameplay demo, and we got a lot to talk about here. So we are going to skim around, but it's good to see that the intro isn't he isn't crying in the mirror. I still don't quite know why they even did it that way. I think that maybe they were just like really proud of like how good they could make the faces look pre-rendered, but it's funny because the faces don't look as well animated anymore. But yeah, this part's mostly one-to-one. They do use a different camera work. Here they kind of pan it out, but they pan it back in actually.
It's ridiculous.
Again, it's just I don't know why the change felt necessary. Oh. Minnie knocked something over. She didn't mean to. She's just like snoozing and slipped off the bed. But yeah, just you can kind of see how they've like reinterpreted this area. But again, they have gone for a longer draw distance, which I do think is maybe not helping the atmosphere. And I think this is again showcasing that just like modern hair is in this weird place right now where it doesn't light properly. Whatever tech they use to kind of make hair look realistic, there's issues with it. There's uncanny issues with it. It's not as bad as the Dead Rising stuff we saw. But yeah, this part does mostly play out the same. Actually, like, pretty accurate, actually. You were asking, by the way, Clarice, do you think the game will have the same playtime? Now, we'll get to that in a bit, actually, but I am going to answer that. Also, this shows that some of the early maps they showed actually don't seem to have been accurate to what they were planning to do. They definitely still have changed stuff a little bit, but this actually is fairly accurate to the layout of Silent Hill 2's map. The original map they showed, it was like completely messed up, and it was again like, why did you feel the need to move shit? But this actually does seem basically the same. But yeah, see, this is already bothering. It's like, okay, they're showing too much of the monster here. In the original, you can't see the monster this well. But because the fog is like further out and has this like multiple distance layers until it becomes thicker, like the fact you can even see this lamppost still, I think that is a problem. But you were asking about... Also, that's a very edgy, over-the-top note. We're going to scan a bit, but you were asking about extra stuff. This is... I think this is supposed to be Neely's bar, yeah. It's kind of weird. They've really redesigned Neely's bar. And I don't know how I feel about it, because it looks... They've added a lot. Like, Needy's bar in the original was, like, in disarray and looked like it was being teared down. Someone has suggested that maybe it's required to come here now. Actually, that might be a different bar. Hang on. Where's this place? Oh, yeah, this is a new place. Now, there are some new places you can go into. And I don't think that is necessarily a bad thing. Obviously, there's the risk of every time you add something to this, are you keeping in with the game's original subtext and storytelling? Like, how does this place thematically fit into the story? Can it thematically fit in? But at the same time, I don't think having more buildings you can just go into. Also, there's some more janky-ass combat we can watch. It's just... It looks like what Downpour was trying to do, which is like bad Zelda combat. And I think that's tonally just off. All these like on-screen splatter effects. And the thing I'm going to talk about here, and it's not showcased super well in these gameplay trailers. But, well, you know, because it locks on, you circle dodge around them, and then you just, you know, that's how Homecoming played. It doesn't look as bad as Homecoming, I'll give them that. But when you do over the shoulder, there are two ways to do the controls. There is pseudo first person, and what that means is that you have a third person camera, but it controls like you're in third person. So the character always looks forward. If you turn the character, they turn with you. If you push the stick down, you'll walk backwards, you won't turn around. Or you have like full 2D movement, which is what Resident Evil 2 Remake does, where the camera is solely just turning around, looking up and down, and the stick just makes you move in that direction. You'll turn, if you push the stick down, you'll turn around and run towards the screen. If you push it left, you run left. And then when you aim your gun and you fire, you then swap to first-person controls where you strafe and backstep. As far as I can tell, Silent Hill 2 is using the full pseudo first-person controls, where your movement and turning is always locked to camera perspective. So you can't run towards the camera. You can only sidestep. And which is how Homecoming handled it as well. And I think that's honestly awkward for this style of game. I think they should have gone for if they were going to do this camera system, they should have gone for the Resident Evil one. Because, and I'll show it more so in the Pyramid Head boss fight. You run into the problem where, because you're not using fixed or like on-rail cameras in certain areas, you can't guarantee the player can see the enemies, and now you're having it so the camera is always looking at their back. So if you turn away from an enemy, you can't run away from an enemy and look at an enemy. And it's awkward. And it's not awkward. There's this misconception that Silent Hill 2 was meant to, quote, play badly. It's bullshit. It's revisionist history, because Silent Hill 2 doesn't play badly. It plays fine. It plays better than fucking Resident Evil did at the time. But it is meant to be simple. It is meant to be deliberate. James in combat is meant to be like it's less about the combat. Most of the combat is just there to chew resources. It's just run past this enemy or spend resources taking out the enemy. It's almost like a turn-based game in a sense. Just like, you know, with free movement and, you know, but like turn-based in philosophy. And oh, Minnie, can you stop knocking stuff over? She's not smacking it with her paws or anything. She's just lying down and her fucking ass is fat ass is like knocking stuff because she's like and banging into it when she's like napping. And I think that's what they've done here. And I think it's going to feel awkward because, and I'm noticing it. I'm noticing in these gameplay videos, the player is trying to back away from enemies, and you can't because you can't run towards the camera. And if they had stuck to their guns and said, "Look, we made the medium. Look, the writing's garbage, but we used fixed camera angles in modern day, and it went fine, and no one moaned at us. We can do this." I get the feeling they wouldn't have put in a 3D tank control option, though they should have. But by default, it probably would have used 2D controls. But because, you know, there's this idea that these controls are bad, they're antiquated, you can't do this anymore. So it doesn't matter that the cinematography, the implied direction of the camera work, and there's more of it to show here, but you can't do that anymore. But that's fine. You can fuck with the combat because having the camera be play, and bear in mind the camera was player controlled in Silent Hill 2. For some reason, no one ever talks about it, but like it only got to fix shots where you couldn't move it. It only did it like it's very set pieces, either in like the boss arena like we saw with the Abstract Daddy, or when you're in puzzle rooms, pretty much. But because, you know, there was that part in history where like survival horror got oversaturated and reviewers decided, oh, we don't like these controls anymore, we want these free controls. But then you give them the 2D control scheme and suddenly they moan because it doesn't work with fixed camera angles properly. And you know what? Oh. Well, that's not what I meant to do. That's a completely different thing. There we go. I meant to take a screenshot in OBS. I've got to reset my timer. Hang on. I knew this was the stream to do it. Hang on. How can I find it? Oh, I've forgotten the website. Hang on. Oh, tick counter, that's it. I gotta reset my counter. I broke the streak. We made it 80 days. We almost got to 100 days. Oh shit, I've got to log on as well. I forgot to... I wish I could set up like a bot command. I wish I didn't have to go through this website. I kind of wish I could like make my own thing and use like chat commands to control it. Okay, what is the time right now? Oh, midnight. There we go. And then I believe I have to refresh. Hang on, what does it say right now? Hang on, let me make this big. Okay, that's not quite right. Sorry, I really should have sorted this out earlier. Hang on, let me refresh one more time. There we go. we're gonna do it again. I'm not gonna reset it for the stream, but it's definitely gonna come up again. But it's just, if you're, the choices about the camera stuff definitely feels like someone insisted, well, you can't do the tank controls, and if you do the 2D controls, then people will moan as though tank controls, and also, you know, you got to make the game look like Resident Evil 4. But if that was the goal, doing this pseudo first person thing. Hold on, we're gonna mute for a bit because I want to look around a bit. Oh no, here it is. Here's the bar. Here's Neely's. I guess there's like multiple Neely's bars now, or there's like a different name for that one. But you can see they have changed the bar here a bit. I don't mind it too much, but we'll see. But see, look, if you turn the camera, I don't think you can fully rotate the camera, and I think if you're moving, I don't think you can move in a straight line and turn the camera. I think if you turn the camera, I think he'll turn. Also, I'm noticing, I think there is examination text, because if you look, you can examine stuff. But I'm guessing it's going to be voice acted, or it's all going to have cutscenes. And my problem with that is I think James talking to himself all the time takes you out of it. Like, yes, James will sometimes comment out loud and stuff, but I actually noticed they're quite reserved about it in this demonstration. I actually didn't find too many areas. Like, watching this whole thing, I've not seen James talk to himself, so maybe they've realized that it goes against the spirit. But this is some example of new puzzles and optional stuff. But there's also been a question of, is this optional? You're asking about if this would have the same playtime or if it'd be longer. The risk of adding all this new stuff is that you've made the game longer and bloated and kind of fucked with the original game's pacing. But it's kind of hard to say if that's going to be the case. You could definitely tell here they really redesigned this area. They've kind of made it so it's got more of a, like, a circle pattern. That one I maybe feel a bit different about, because I do think the apartments turn people off because it's built like a real apartment. That's the thing I'll say, is that the layout here is more video gamey here, whereas the one in Silent Hill 2 is more realistic, but then it's also, like, you know, tight corridors, and for this gameplay, again, you can't do the tight corridors with this camera system. And you'll notice a lot that the camera will have to pan into James more when it collides with stuff, and that's a problem in combat. So this is one of the things I did want to talk about, and it's Mary's dress flashlight 3127. This is one of the scenes that really shows how this game... Oh, no, I'm... Wrong timer, sorry. Took advantage and makes a case for why fixed camera angles are so important. Is that you can do some amazing cinematography and storytelling in a scene. And this scene is able, with its framing, that the game will frame James on the screen. It's not just, oh, we're showing you key items, we're showing you that this is important. It's also telling in how it's communicating this scene. Because what's going on in this scene is that you come into this room and there's a mannequin, and the mannequin for some reason is wearing the dress and outfit that is in all of, like, James's pictures of Mary that he has, or like the little bit of the tape you see of that they filmed in the hotel. This was the dress she was wearing, and it's almost shot like it's from the dresser's perspective, and the light is shining at James. There's an intentional shift of perspective. The game that previously had the camera tied to you and you controlled, it takes it away and uses it to convey a feeling that you can't get through in text. And also, in this scene, they start the camera off here, and I will say, in the PS2 version, you don't really notice this. I'll say, this footage here, the game brightness is a bit off. If you're playing this on PS2, you don't really notice this. But also, when you're playing this, your focus is on here. So the fact this is even here, you don't see it first. So you pick up the flashlight, and then suddenly you get control back, and shit pops off. They knew they wanted to keep this, right? But they've had to do it very differently. So the way they do it is they make the flashlight, like, blaringly bright. But the thing you'll notice, you can't see what's here. You can't tell this is Mary's dress. The forced perspective change and the implications it had is gone, right? And also, I'm going to go back a bit. If you look here, there's nothing here, right? You pick this up, and they do the same jump scare. Here's the thing. I swear... Oh, by the moon... No. I don't think that enemy is here. The problem is that this is not the footage that the Game Impress recorded. This seems to be footage that they gave to developers to show. Sorry. To, like, websites and game coverage to show. Because multiple people have uploaded this, and it's the same gameplay. And that's because, you know, it's controlling the image, the product, of what gets out. And they probably didn't want to show someone fucking around in this room trying to look around and see where the mannequin enemy is. I don't think it's in this room. I think you pick up the flashlight and they just teleport it in. And they also move you. Like, I guess maybe it's just like the way the video is compressed, but like, you can't even tell there's a space back here. Like, no, you look, there is no mannequin there. That enemy is not here. If it is, it's like, I guess maybe the video compression's messing with it. I don't think it's there. And that shows you that they know that they can't implement that original idea well with this camera mandate, and they have to use like a really cheap fix. The fact it doesn't even get up as well, it just starts out laying out. And yeah, I think the enemy's jumping on you and you having these like grab animation. I don't think that's tonally right. Or, oh god, I didn't see that earlier. Watch this fucking get up animation. Like, you... That's not creepy. I'm actually curious if we can see in this footage. Well, nah, they defeat the enemy too quick. But yeah, I bet most of this examine text is missing. And frankly, that was an issue with the Resident Evil 2 remake, is that all that world building done through the examination text, all that is gone, sadly. Let's skim around more. I'll put game audio back on. Ah, here we go. Yes. Here's something I wanted to talk about. Okay. So, I mentioned this earlier, but I'm going to make my position on this very clear. The whole yellow paint discourse is, I think, misguided and not correct about what the issue is. Because this kind of signposting has existed in games for, like, over 20 years. Silent Hill 2, the original game, arguably did it. In fact, you get to the apartment, if you can find it on your own, but you also find fins that draw lines on your map that tell you where to go. And they also use light and some other color fins. There was an interview from... What was this? June? Yes, June. Silent Hill Remake will not use yellow paint and the like, producer assures. Don't lie. You did. Not only did you use the same kind of signposting, you'll notice it a lot as we look through this footage, that like areas you can climb over or through will typically have white fabric that like moves in the wind, but you literally use yellow tape. And it's like visible here and here, and also funny enough, once you put it here, watch this, it disappears because the tape is for some reason not wrapped around, and obviously they're doing that so that the player doesn't think they have to move it again. But it's... I don't think the implementation is bad here. I just think it's hilarious that the producer is just lying. Don't lie. Also, they've mentioned you can turn off... Let me go back here. That icon, you can turn those off. Here's the problem. This is not using fixed camera angles anymore. This game's designed with the icons on. And yes, you have done this color coding thing in places. Like, here's the fabric, here's the yellow on the stuff. Admittedly, this is the only yellow bit I've seen so far. But, you know, if you used it there, it's probably going to be elsewhere. Let's skim around. I don't know why this video is taking so long to load now. Weird. It claims it's 1080p 60, but this is not running in 60 FPS, this footage. But I've noticed here that some of these, like, these corridors are wider, but they are trying to make them claustrophobic. Let's just... Okay. I know this cutscene, we're going to skip it. There's not much to say there. But... My whole position is that the whole complaint with yellow paint is that people are only looking at the bad examples and the examples that are yellow and using that to moan about all of it when you can use yellow as a signifier and it works. Sometimes you use a different color. Doom and Doom Eternal use green. A lot of real life places use yellow. Like, I don't know how common it is in the US, but if you go to like an airport or a factory, or a train station, you'll see that a lot of handrails and ladders are yellow. Sorry, stairs. Like, that is a real life thing we do. Obviously, you know, some people highlight Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and that has, I think it has yellow paint on climbing stuff, and that's a bit weird, and I could see that. I haven't played that game, so I can't tell you like how egregious it is, but I get the point. But this kind of stuff is done in a lot of places. Yeah, we can skip over this. Oh yeah, this is the room where you find the gun. Yeah, see, look. You see he auto-turned there? It's because they don't let you free move. And I think that's going to make the controls feel bad, if I'm going to be honest. Because, you know, when you... Oh, here's a scene to talk about. There you go. See, look. See? You don't lie. You are 100% using the exact same type of color-based marking. Yes, you didn't use yellow, but you're using white. And, you know, they're not the first game to do it. Uncharted used the white. Tomb Raider, the Tomb Raider reboot trilogy uses it. But, here we go. We get to talk about another example of how the free cam and also the cutscene camera here. I don't know why they were like, okay, we need to move the camera here. We're going to show it in close. I guess because they knew that players could do this anyway. Here's the thing with this scene. And I do have a time code for it. 3552. Also, I think that scene might be gone. It wasn't in the gameplay trailer, like where he shows up like this. So, here's the cutscene, and this is well known at this point, you know, because it's like the trivia point that everyone likes to talk about with Silent Hill 2, is that a lot of the dead bodies, not all of them, that's a common mistake people make, but the bodies that you see that Eddie has killed are not this. But a lot of the random corpses you find are reusing James's model. And that's obviously an intentional thing. And you look at this for a while, you can tell. And you know, it's because they're supposed to be hinting to a potential conclusion to the story, right? In this scene, you can never position the camera to show the face, to not make it too obvious. The problem is, in this new camera system, they can't guarantee that. The camera's over the shoulder. You can move it around however you want. So they have to put this over the body. Let's skim back just a tiny bit more. They have to obscure the body more and put this big sheet over it. I think as well, like, they've given him a different coat. So the fact that this is supposed to be James, like, I don't know if it even is anymore. Here's some stuff out here. It's something I think you'd have to have more hands-on to say, but another thing I'm also considering is the change of having free aim with the guns, whereas they locked on. I mean, you would probably have to do a lot of rebalancing for that, when I think about that, because the whole thing with the original, right, is that it was just a resource. You weren't missing shots. It was just, are you using your ammo properly? Because the combat is not meant to be the focus. You're not meant to be playing the game for the combat. But now that you are expected to aim, like, are they going to give you way more ammo? Or are they expecting players to just be really good shots? Also, yeah, it's, again, you see that they put a lot of this wall you can break. Oh, look, it's white. This thing you can interact with got a white sheet over it. This is like a new clock puzzle thing. We can skip around. Yeah, so someone's noted the picking up the syringes, and they're worried, like, is it going to make you look at it every time? See that white breakable wall again. Because, yeah, spoilers, you can do yellow paint marking without using yellow or paint. Again, interview says, end the like. You lied. It's fine how it's implemented in the game. I don't really have any complaints about it, but look, if you're not going to do the original camera system, you have to do this kind of signposting. And people are going to moan about it. So if you wanted to avoid that, you should have been more faithful to the original. But they wanted the game to look like Resident Evil remakes. Let's see. I'm skipping around a bit because I have key stuff I want to talk about. Let me check my notepad, actually. Let's see. Okay, let's see. Okay, we've mentioned that. Mentioned Mary's dress. Yep, dead TV. Okay, most of the rest of the stuff I want to talk about is in the Pyramid Head boss fight. This seems to be a new puzzle. They have mentioned that they did add new puzzles. My only worry, or they've moved stuff around. There's the toilet scene. Someone's pointed out that used to be an optional scene. Though I don't mind them making that required, just because it's such an iconic scene and you don't really want players to miss that. Okay, here we go. So let me get my time code. And I'm going to give you a content warning again. 1:14:39. Now, the violence here is meant to give a feeling of sex and death without showing actual sex and death. But it's, you know, it still gives that feeling. So, you know, I'm just going to give you the warning on it. Also, it's kind of hard to tell because, again, the game's been played a certain way. It's kind of hard to tell if you actually can avoid enemies. Because in all the gameplay we've seen, the player almost always engages with them. And there seems to be an implication that enemies can follow you because you don't go through transitions when you use doors anymore. Also, yeah, I'm gonna mute the music now. There we go. Why did my mouse cursor disappear? My mouse has just disappeared. There it is. That was weird. So yeah, look. This is meant to look very suspect. Right? Just a head, like... But, if you actually pay attention, that's not actually what's going on. And this is something Masahiro Ito himself has confirmed. He said, no, he is not actually doing it dirty with the corpses. But we'll watch how this boss fight plays out. It's, again, very claustrophobic area. The camera's suited to it. Also, you can see some difference in the pyramid head design. And I want to talk about this because I saw it and it bothered me, but I didn't know why. And now looking at this, I can see. But the camera, you know, makes this fight in a tight area work, right? And also, you can see, like, how awkward and slow it is for Pyramid Head to even fight you. Like, the fact he's a threat, but it's almost like he's, you know, the weight, and, you know, because a lot of Pyramid Head, he's, like, the most literal embodiment of James's guilt. And, like, the weapon is literally supposed to be, like, heavy like guilt, because, you know, guilt weighs on a person, and I think the helmet design is also meant to evoke that a bit, because the idea of, like, this amount of weight on you, like, he can't help but move awkwardly, and he's got, like, very vague skin and lines on him. Also, you could see it on this. They also signpost in other ways where there's another door that has, like, a giant H on it. They sometimes just put random scratches on the doors that are, like, important. But this is supposed to be that same encounter, right? The enemy is still there, but it's just on the floor. They've completely removed that part. You see that, his back is now exposed. It's like a more obvious apron. It's not tied around him. The hands are kind of the same, but it's not very vague. And this is something that, funny enough, Masahiro Ito brought up in one of the early interviews where he said people said concerns that the implied horror of what was too dark and too obscure to see is going to ruin the atmosphere. And then his response was, enjoy 4K horror visuals, which is like, well, that's not really addressing the problem, is it? You're just admitting you can't fix the problem because you're prioritizing graphics and photorealism over aesthetic and style. And I think Pyramid Head looks too human now. The fact that you can, like, see the back of his apron, you can see the detail of his, like, the bottoms he's wearing, the pants, and whereas in the original, it's, like, very vague. It's like you can't tell what part of him is skin and clothes, almost. Like, it almost looks like the apron is part of him. And I like that, right? Also, let me see if I time coded it. No, I didn't time code it. But I am going to find it, because I imagine this playthrough probably shows it. Let's see. Let me button around a bit. It's down here somewhere. Yeah, it's in this. It's near here. Do they pick up the great knife in this playthrough? But yeah, look how tight these corridors are. And that's an intentional thing. Like the game wanted you to feel claustrophobic and uncomfortable. And this area especially is the one that gets to me on an existential level, because at this point you're miles underground. You're impossibly underground. This area is enclosed. There's no light source here. It shouldn't exist. This weird mundane corridor shouldn't exist down here in these caves. And the idea of being stuck miles underground in an area with no seeming exit is terrifying. There's the Orozco paper. I'm guessing that some of this stuff is just going to be forced pickups now. I'm curious how much of this you can even skip now. Maybe this... Okay, no, I don't think they do pick up the great knife. Let me see. Silent Hill 2. Pyramid Head Room. No. Nope. Is this it? Nope. Yeah, here it is. This room. I think, in a very vague sense... These are fan art. You see this painting here? Weirdly, there's not a lot of good pictures of it, considering I searched room. I think this boss room is supposed to look like this. With these, like, cages with the people in them. But this is an entirely original room. Okay. Okay. So we've got some stuff to talk about here. But let's start out. So, this doesn't look like a Silent Hill 1 room. This doesn't look like a Silent Hill 2 room. This is a Silent Hill 1 room. Also, I'm noticing, like, yeah, the player here does not have a lot of ammo. But again, that might just be how they've got the preview set up. But they've made it a way bigger room, and they've made this into an action fight. I'm just going to be frank up front. They've turned this into an action fight. Pyramid Head now has these, like, massive sparks flying from his sword constantly. Even though this is a concrete floor, and he's not dragging it that fast. And he has this, like, really expanded moveset. Here's my example that you can't run away while looking at the character. Because when you turn the camera... Look, see? James turns with you. And you can see in multiple points in this fight, it's really awkward. Also, I don't know who's playing this. Who just does random dodges for no reason. Also, okay, that's not the best angle to show it. But you see, he's really defined now. Yeah, this isn't scary. He looks like an enemy that should be in Devil May Cry with the way he fights. And I think, also, oh, it's there, it's here. I want to show this. There is some really bad clipping with his sword. Like, his animations, when he uses his sword, look, boom, goes right through here. And it's not the only time it happens. And also, like, he breaks that, but I don't... Yeah, whatever. He didn't need to. Like, this first fight is not meant to be spectacular. The whole thing with him is that you can't even beat him in the first encounter, and it feels too extra, you know. And that's how I feel about the combat in general. Yeah, here's what I want to show, though, as well. he now has fucking anime speed lines on his attacks. Not all of them, granted. Also, I want to highlight that attack again. This attack absolutely should have hurt the character. Maybe again they had like instant kill or like hits that would kill the player disabled. That 100% hit him. Maybe it's supposed to be there's like invincibility frames in the dodge and that's why he didn't take damage. But that totally goes through the character there. And also, like, look at all the fucking sparks happen when you hit him with a wooden board on his helmet. And, like, what is he doing here to generate sparks on the sword? It's just lying there. Also, I don't know why it's raining in this scene. There it is. That's the one I posted on Twitter. Here we go. I'm going to slow this right down. When I saw this, I was like, who the fuck thinks this looks good? Who is like, oh, this might actually be a decent remake? How is that tonally in line with Silent Hill 2? Why the fuck does he have anime sword and impact lines? I get why they're probably there from a design point of view. It's to like, same with the sparks, it's to make the players watch the sword, right? You put a big flashing sparks coming off the sword all the time, and that means that players will focus on it. But it feels like they're like, oh, what's all this cool action stuff we can add? Oh, we're going to make the sword spark. And he's going to have, look, it's just sparks like all the time. What did it even spark off of here? I don't think it actually hit this. This is too far away. It just sparked in the air there. What happens if I play at full speed? Can I figure out why it sparks? Nope. It just randomly sparks. I guess it just has, he just has a sparkler attached to the end of the blade. There we go. Happens again here. Look, he does this swing. You see all this stuff here? Completely clipped through all of it. That doesn't bother me too much, but look at the camera fuck up here. Because there's physical objects here. And the camera couldn't turn these transparent. So the camera that's normally like this far back went into the back of his head. I'm sorry, this combat doesn't look good. They've tried to do too much with the combat. Also, look at that fucking animation where he turns away, look. Whoop! He just warped into place again. It looks... If this was an indie game that was made by like 20 people and was using Unreal 5 store assets, I would be like, hey, great attempt. I hope you one day get the budget to do something bigger. This is Silent Hill 2. For fuck's sake. And people played this. And then they were given gameplay demos to, like, take home and upload. Yeah, exactly, Clarice. You have photorealistic scenes and characters, but then there's all this anime and cartoon design. It doesn't fit the tone. Like, Devil May Cry 5 gets away with it because it's a eccentric world, and arguably the photorealism was probably a bad idea for an art direction-wise for Devil May Cry 5, but, you know, whatever. So, that game doesn't rely on, like, environmental storytelling and shit like that. Okay, so that's the end of this gameplay demonstration. I'm just gonna let shit play now. Let's get my music back. And let me check my notes one more time. Also, I'm looking. I said I was gonna try the MEO demo. We're not gonna have time. I'm looking. We're not gonna have time. I'm gonna have to play that another day. Maybe I'll do a bonus stream. Or, you know what? I might just wait until all 3 chapters are out and play it then. Okay. I've got this notepad where I made all my notes. So we talked about Maria being less seductive. Though she does have the butterfly tattoo, I realise. I mentioned Laura and Maria existing in the same space and scene. Weird changes to the cemetery. Angela not being aged. James's, like, casual-friendly tone instead of his, like, this... I mentioned spoilers, so let's get into it. The whole thing with James is that he comes into town and suddenly believes that his wife died 3 years ago of a terminal illness known as Dam disease. Very bad. You can blame the beavers for that. Yeah. No. That opening scene looks better. Again, parts of this look fine. That's why all these little tiny bits that are so important to the overall recipe drag the whole thing down. It's like if you were making bread and you didn't put yeast in it. Yeah, the main ingredient is like flour and salt, and water, but if you don't put the fucking yeast in it, it doesn't work. Oh, the fire hydrant's yellow, is it? I think that's a regional thing. I think certain places use yellow for fire hydrants. Like I said, with red fire hydrants, yellow fire hydrants, we color code shit in real life. That's just how we do. You know, I am going to skip this ahead a bit. There we go. Let's see. Okay, so we talked about the janky combat, yep. Okay, sorry, no, I skipped ahead a bit. But yeah, so, yes, James, his story is supposed to be a coping mechanism. The whole big twist is Aerith dies at the end of Disc 1 in Final Fantasy VII, yes, of course, and the most overdone copy twist in all video games, Mary was dead the whole time, it was all in your head. It was all in your head, Luigi. The thing is, Silent Hill 2 story, when you just write the story points, is not actually the part that makes it amazing. It's the storytelling. Just the fact that James is... it's all in his head is not the part that makes it great. It's how it's told to you. It's how it's communicated to the player. Right? And one of that is that James doesn't sound right because his story doesn't add up. Yeah, I describe all art, but tell that to the fucking people who made all the Western Silent Hill games that just rehashed the Silent Hill 2 plotline because, oh, we can just, instead of dead wife, we can do dead kid. and that works. That's a new storyline. That's not entirely predictable. But there are a lot of people who look at Silent Hill and think it's just the story elements. It's just the characters that make it good and not the presentation and the acting and the gameplay and the cinematography. It's just superficial elements is what they like about it. I hate to say it because it feels like I'm saying not real fans. But there are some people that I've talked to who I talk about these important aspects and they go like, oh, I don't care. That doesn't really matter. I've had someone literally say that to me. Which is like, well, then you don't really like Silent Hill 2, do you? Because, like, the gameplay was never, like, the main draw. Even though, again, it is, like, improved over what survival horror was doing at the time, right? But James's story, this letter, funny enough, the letter he's reading is actually a longer letter that Mary wrote before she died that he was meant to read once she died. And that's just a tiny quote where she's trying to say, look, I have regrets. I wish we'd gone back to Silent Hill. But my spirit is that, like, you know, it's her idea of heaven, you know. That's what she's kind of trying to say. That's what the special place is supposed to be. It's like, oh, you know, your memory of that, that's where I am. You know, like, and she goes into a longer diatribe of, like, you know, James, like, live your life. Don't blame yourself for me. I'm sorry for the stuff I put you through, like that kind of thing. And James, in his like hysteria after the guilt, that he like gets so consumed by the illness and everything that's happened to Mary and him, that he puts Mary out of her misery. And there's an argument of like, how much was it for him and how much was it for Mary's sake? And a lot of that depends on what ending you got. But, you know, like James himself like admits that it was conflicted. It was for conflicted reasons, and that's why he feels so guilty about it, because he didn't want Mary to suffer anymore, but he also was glad to not deal with it anymore. Oh god, this fucking combat looks so bad. I'm sorry. Just... oh, I can't help, especially with this art style. If they hadn't have tried to go for like, oh, we're doing PS5 only graphics, I probably wouldn't have, you know, minded. But again, like Resident Evil 2 Remake came out like, what, 5 years ago? Or longer, and it animates better than this. I know it doesn't have as much melee stuff in it, but still. But he essentially goes into a fugue state and like rewrites what happens to himself. And it's, again, arguable if he did it intentionally or if Silent Hill's dark power is fucked with his memory. So once he comes into town, he forgets what happened. Or you know, because subconsciously he's in denial. He doesn't want to admit what he's done. So maybe subconsciously has manifested into literally making him forget, you know? And so therefore, like, he doesn't sound very convinced in his own story. We showed that in that Maria scene where he has to be reminded that of his backstory. And he always sounds like kind of out of it. And there's been an argument about like if that was intended by the actors or not. But like we have all the developer quotes from people like Jeremy Blaustein, the voice actors, Owaku, all the stuff you can read in the Book of Lost Memories guidebook, the Japan only one, and the making of documentary. It seems to be intentional, and it just seems to be that, you know, because some people have beef behind the scenes, or some people don't like certain actors. And look, I'm not going to get into it here. Guy, see, he does say a lot of stupid stuff, and I get why people don't like him, and that's totally fair. And there's stuff that he says that I don't like, but it doesn't mean everything he's ever said or done is wrong. You can't just go, I don't like this person, so they're not a good actor, because that just doesn't work. It's not fair. That's not. The world's more complicated than that. It'd be great if it wasn't like that, but it's not, you know? But in a lot of the cutscenes, he doesn't seem like that disconnected. Like, he seems almost jovial when he's talking to Angela, which is weird. Like, he should... like, in the original, he almost is, like, a bit disinterested in her. Because, like, he's got like a single-minded purpose that he's kind of, you know, the whole thing, like some people talked about with Angela, and like Angela is one of my favorite characters. Like I think she kind of steals the show in Silent Hill 2 in terms of her plight and what she goes through and how important she is to the message of the game about dealing with your trauma and your guilt, you know, because, you know, like, the perfect world, she wouldn't. But I think for the point in the narrative, she has to not be savable. She has to, you know, maybe someone else could have, but James is not able to. Because James is just as bad as her. Like, it would be a hypocrite for him to come in and help. So their relationship throughout the game is meant to be awkward. It's always meant to be weird and off, you know? And uncomfortable in the way he talks to people. And he sounds a bit too natural. And you know, I don't want him to sound inhuman, but it's just, I don't quite get the same fugue state, in denial speech from him. But I just want to make sure I mention that. We mentioned the facial capture. some of the Silent Hill 1 aesthetic that's just kind of randomly reused throughout the game. Some of the new dialogue I mentioned, like, some of the dialogue is one-to-one, and some of the dialogue they've just completely rewritten, but is kind of meant to be the same scene. And it really feels like someone looked at the original dialogue and thought it was too subtle. Another example is that Laura scene. In the original, James goes, "I can't believe you don't have a scratch on you." And Laura's response is just, "Why should I?" And they leave it like a bit vague, and they leave it for you to work out, like, you know, she doesn't even there's nothing she questions, because literally nothing dangerous is manifesting, because she has no guilt. She's a child. She's innocent in all this. Whereas, you know, like James, Angela, and Eddie, their guilt torments them, right? In the new one, James outright says it's dangerous to her. And then she responds, "Well, what would have hurt me?" And it's too on the nose. It's spelling things out too much, in my opinion. But I wanted to make sure to, you know, to mention that, right? And we talked about the Abstract Daddy boss room, and then let's go over the gameplay. I've talked about the combat. We can see it here again. I don't think it looks good. Maybe, like, who knows? Maybe it looks bad, but when you're playing it, it doesn't feel that bad. It doesn't look like it feels good, though. But I can't say for sure, right? But I've played games that control similar to this. If they were... You know, if they were going to do this, I would have gone for first person. I would have gone for, like, Condemned. And gone for, like, a timed block, like Silent Hill 3 uses. Instead of this dodge. Because the thing is Silent Hill 2, you could always use the sidestep to dodge. You could always move backwards. It's not that bad. He doesn't look like a military person. But it definitely looks too competent. I don't want him to, like, trip over himself, ban into wall, like... No, you could... No, that's the thing, actually. You could ban into walls in the original, so I do want that. But the idea of, like, him tripping over and running into walls, or, like, him trying to swing a weapon and it, like, flies out his hands, like, that's what I'm asking for. But... like, the only reason enemies attack him is because subconsciously that's James is here for punishment, right? And it shouldn't be this, like, visceral, gory struggle to beat enemies. And the fact that he has the dodge and these, like, counter moves and heavy attacks feels like you could get through this game on your first playthrough without skipping any encounters. Which is weird. Because it's supposed to be survival horror. And again, that feels like the design of Homecoming and Downpour, where they were supposed to be survival horror, but then they made the melee combat too strong. Again, doesn't look as bad as those, but it still looks wonky. And yeah, not grounded in the world. Especially with all the, like, warping to poses and snapping and robotic stuff. We didn't see too much of it. You mostly see it in the Pyramid Head boss fight, but the camera definitely is not that well suited either. It has this problem, as I've shown, where it will, if the camera is going to go through a solid object, instead of going through the object, it will push up against it and move closer, which is not a great camera system. That's a worse camera system than the original. I'll die on that hill. And also, a lot of areas, like the boss arenas, have had to be made wide open to accommodate for that. And that's a downgrade. We mentioned the Mary Dress scene. I mentioned the yellow tape stuff. The changes to the dead body scene. And all the stuff in the Pyramid Head boss fights. I think that is everything. Also, and I mentioned as well, I don't know. First off, I don't know what the importance of this dress is. James doesn't comment on it, so I don't know why they show it. I feel like someone could argue that maybe it's supposed to be their wedding dress or something, but I don't know what that adds really. I think that's about everything, though. But I really want to stress, the first thing I saw out of this new stuff was the Maria prison scene. And it's, again, one of the most important scenes in the original game, where it's like directly playing with the player's expectation. Not only James's, but the players. Where the nature of Maria, it comes into question. And, you know, and the game plays tricks on you, because she suddenly starts talking like Mary. And you're like, well, wait, is she Mary? Was she alive the whole time and something's happened to her? But obviously not. And then she becomes Maria again, and she, like, explicitly, like, touches James. And also, at the end of the scene, is straight up like, okay, come here, big boy. We're gonna do it. There's not gonna be a better time or place. You better come round here and get some, is basically the way that scene goes. Straight up, she's like, you should hurry. I can't do anything through these bars, is how she says it. And the whole scene, she plays both characters the same for some reason. And again, I bet that was the voice direction. I bet the voice and mocap direction was play these characters with the same voice, like the HD collection erroneously did. And that scene is not as impactful without it. It doesn't work. The fact that she is talking and acting like Mary is barely evident, despite the fact that James says it. And that's, what's the rule? Show, don't tell. Now they're telling, not showing. Yeah, that's the thing. I don't think it is the actors' fault, because there's some scenes they do where the actors are pretty good, and the stuff they've shown of Eddie seems decent. Angela, I just think, is miscast, and maybe Mary Maria's miscast too. Maybe that's kind of the issue. Yes, it comes off like they think the audience is dumb. It comes off as people who I do believe genuinely think they love Silent Hill 2. But they also think it's got major problems. There seems to be someone who's looked at the story and gone like, oh, this needs adjusting, this doesn't work, that doesn't work. Oh, look, here's more of that signposting I was telling you about. Like, again, okay, that animation there, by the way, is James putting the circle on the map. But if he does that, why do you even need to put a massive fucking H carved into the wood? I don't get it. That didn't need to be there. And also, you know, that pulling out the map animation didn't look good either. I would have just cut that. I get they're kind of going for this no pausing thing. Also, that's... Look, I'm just going to say it. You know, there's parts I like. That's a pretty good setup scare. Obviously, the issue this has is that a player could turn around too quickly and miss it. Right? Also, the way the enemy, like, sidesteps back into the scene, it does not look good. Also, you can tell that a lot of motion capture was done with this enemy. Also, I'm going to say, if you can just shoot enemies in the leg to knock them down and then melee them on the ground, that's very overpowered. That's going to, like, trivialize combat entirely if that rings true throughout the game. And again, maybe they, you know, maybe they've designed it more so, like, you are mostly meleeing and the guns are more scarce. And, you know, maybe that's the adjustment they made. But we'll have to see on that. Oh, handgun ammo 4. Okay, yeah, they definitely have changed the ammo pickup amount. Also, yep, there's the show that enemies can open doors. So if enemies can open doors, can you even run away from enemies? You know, puzzles don't seem to pause the game. Picking up items doesn't pause the game. I don't know if you can even pause the game to change items and use health potions and all that. Like, who knows? They've not even shown looking at old memos, so I'm curious if that pauses the game, if there's like a journal you pull out as well. We'll have to see. But you're showcasing that part of the game, that trailer, they're basically trying to recreate. That's such a pivotal scene, and they get it wrong. And it's like, it's kind of brazen. Like, surely someone who worked on the game was like, we've changed this. And we're just being upfront that we have not tried to... Remember? Oh, the original vision? That's not the original vision at all. Like, you know, art is subjective. But there are objective ideas, like, that is not the original vision, because that's not how the original game plays out. I can't sit here, you know, I accept the reality that, you know, art is subjective, and a lot of standards in art are socially constructed. They matter, but they are socially constructed. So I can't argue that making these changes is good or bad, ultimately. And I do accept that, just to make it clear. But, you know, this is still my view on things, that Silent Hill 2, you know, as an art piece, works the way it was made. Granted, I have some very minor quibbles with the gameplay. It's very minor stuff I would change. If you play on hard combat mode, you'll know that, like, it breaks the boss encounters. It makes the bosses too strong. It's specifically, there's the scene where Pyramid Head is chasing you and Maria. That scene is broken on hard mode, because you have to constantly stop and stun lock Pyramid Head to stop him chasing you. And when I did my original hard playthrough years ago in my Scuff era, I had to use like a weird exploit with a chainsaw to do it. And the twin Pyramid Head fight near the end of the game, I had to use a like weird quirk with how weapons will bounce off of walls, but still has damage properties. And the axe would... I was using the Great Knife, that's the Pyramid Head weapon, and I would swing it, hit the two Pyramid Heads, and then it would hit the wall and swim back, which would speed up the animation and also hit them on the rebound. And also the camera in that... You know, I'll admit, there is one area where the fixed camera is bad, and I think it's that fight. But that's not because of the fixed camera. It's not because of fixed camera angles. It's where they chose to put it. I think they put it in a bad place. For some reason, the camera is in the center of the room, whereas they should have used the camera system that they used in the final boss fight, where it follows you. You know? So I'm not going to lie there and say Silent Hill 2 is perfect, you can't fix anything about it. There are some lines that are cheesy, but, you know, like, I don't think any fan wants them removed. It's always weird where you see people like, okay, you know, I want to do a version of Silent Hill 2, but I'm gonna, like, take out how can you sit there and eat pizza line. It's like, no, like, it's warts and all, you know. Hang on. I'm gonna bring up one last video. That I think says this stuff probably better than I can.
The creatures in Silent Hill 2 are not your run-of-the-mill.
Okay, hang on.
Why not?
I need to... Okay, hang on. Well, first I need to turn off my music here. Hang on. There's a... I don't remember where it is. It's something that's a shadow there. Let me skim through here. There's a certain part of the documentary.
I don't look like...
And character has...
She ran
Take her picture.
Here we go.
Sato explains why.
I'm going to turn this bit up. And,
Has much more appeal than other heroines.
Don't ever leave me alone. You're supposed to take care of me.
God, Monica Taylor was such a good... She's so good.
So...
For example, the one of Final Fantasy the movie.
Yeah.
Sato explains why.
She ran away.
That the main girl character doesn't have a wrinkle. and doesn't have a kind of a bad point. She is kind of perfect. For example, if you are attracted by some woman, she's not perfect. If you take her pictures, sometimes her face is like that. It's not perfect, but if always she's perfect, I guess you won't love her. You are in love with her because she's human. She has character. That character has a bad point. Of course, bad point, and good point. They didn't make that, but it's more real than Silent Hill 2nd. From visual or technique point of view. But
so they mentioned earlier that he's talking a lot about Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within in his comparison
I think,
here.
I made it more realistic.
Because like the way they designed the main character in Spirits Within, who is supposed to become a digital actress, if you could believe that shit. She looks like a plastic model.
Work.
But I wanted to just, that speaks so true to these classic games, these games that supposedly the industry puts on a pedestal. Silent Hill 2, it's the greatest psychological horror ever made, right? His speech there about how the things you love because they're not perfect. You love the good and the bad parts, because without the good, without the bad, you don't have the good, right? And so Silent Hill 2, the original, stands because of, as it is as a whole product. If you go into it and think you can fix it, you think there's room for improvement, there's parts of the story we can change or add to, I think you're going in with the wrong mind space. And someone like, I'm gonna play devil's advocate here, or straw man, I'm not sure which. Someone might look at Final Fantasy Remake or Final Fantasy Rebirth that add and change a lot. But that's the funny thing about those games. Those games are not remakes. And I think that was a good approach to take. You can't do it again. You can't have another game try and do that take, because as soon as it's obvious that you're doing a pseudo sequel meta story, then you know how it's going to end, right? You figure it out from the start. And it's the same issue all the Western Silent Hill games do. They ape Silent Hill. Once you realize they're aping Silent Hill, you know that the main character has repressed guilt and either a false memory or something they won't admit. So like too early on what the twist is going to be. Unless it's fucking Silent Hill Downpour, where depending on what ending you get, you're in like 4 out of the 5 endings, you don't feel guilt about anything. So why the fuck are you even in Silent Hill? But whatever, we'll get to that another day maybe. But like this is also highlights my problem of, you don't have all these creative minds who went through the adversity. But sorry, I should get back to my point about Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy 7, and again, if you haven't played them, this would be spoilers, but Rebirth Remake is not a remake. It's actually a sequel. The story seems to be that time is looping. That the events of Final Fantasy 7 happen, the entire history of the world happens, the heat, death of the universe happens, and then it starts again, and the same events play out. Seems to, like, some of that's going to be fan interpretation, but that seems to be what they're implying. Because unless they're going to say there's some mechanical reason why the events are happening again. But that's what's going on in those games. They're doing a new thing. They're not even reimaginings. They are literal remakes. The story is being remade in universe. For fuck, JoJo's does that. That's how JoJo reboots itself. The power that the villain gets in part 6 allows him to reboot the universe. Literally. And I think this sensibility that Sado has about beauty, about, you know, his, like, and he's talking about Maria and Mary there, about how they're not perfect. And that's a big point with Maria. Mary to James was not seductive, was not this like flirty, assertive person that would make the moves on him, that would work in like an adult bar and all this kind of stuff. Because she represents his denial that he's trying to find a replacement that he can never have. So the replacement that he manifests is one that doesn't resemble what he actually wants, but then obviously to play with him starts to exhibit the personality and traits of Mary to fuck with him. You know, and the remake, you know, how similar they seem to be now, it like ruins that whole game, you know, that the Finn's playing with you. And I don't think, you know, again, it's subjective. Some people are going to look at Silent Hill 2 and they'll go like, yeah, it was fine. I think the voice acting sucks because I don't get that the characters are supposed to sound like fucked up people, but whatever. But every time I've seen people, you know, the HD collection, the new voices had the exactly same issue. I don't know how you would find this. Maybe it's on Wayback Machine. Tom Hewlett was the guy who put himself in charge of the redubbing because he was like, well, if you're going to force the redub, I'm going to make sure it comes out good. But he made this huge post on his blog website about how he was fixing shit. Where he was like, oh, Mary and Maria shouldn't have different voices. Mary shouldn't sound light and airy because she was dying. Well, you never hear her on her deathbed. You only hear her in flashbacks. The only time you hear her real voice is when she's sick and you hear a flashback in a corridor and she does sound sick there. Every other time you hear her, she's like a magical manifested voice. It's not really her. He talks about Angela. Oh, I made Angela sound young. And all this other stuff. And like, you know, and I think he even went into like Silent Hill 3 a little bit as well. And it's like, well, if you went into this and you were like, I'm going into this, but I'm going to hit the true vision because I know better than the art, you know, the art came out like this, but I know the creator's intent better than the creator themselves. And I hate that mindset, even if it's a mindset you don't realize you have. And I get the impression that this is the overall feeling that has taken control of this project. For everything they're trying to keep the same, there's clearly stuff that the developers thought they could change and improve on. And it doesn't come off as them changing it because they want to play with players' expectations or anything like that. And again, I don't think Silent Hill 2 is a piece that needs to play on players' expectations because I think it stands on its own. If you're going to do that, just make something new. And all the dev comments where they've mentioned like, oh, like the original developers actually want to make more changes and do new shit. It's like, yeah, because they did Silent Hill 2. They don't see the need to do it again. Masahiro Ito famously, about a decade ago, tweeted out that he would work on a new Silent Hill game if he was allowed to kill Pyramid Head on screen. Because he's so fucking sick of the character and the concept being reused over and over, cheapening it, right? So, yeah, I bet the developers wanted to do something new. But also, I have to mention that most of the original developers aren't involved here, so you don't have that same circumstance and the people as they were back then. It's it kind of got famous because it's a disastrous interview. There was this interview that a Channel 4 News in the UK did with Robert Downey Jr., where he was doing press for like one of the Avengers movies. And the guy just randomly starts asking him about his like troubled past when he was like in and out of rehab and asking questions about his father. And at one point, Robert Downey Jr. shuts down the interview. He's like, we're here to talk about the movie, right? Like, I'm not, you know, that's not the kind of interview I booked into. Like, I'm not here to talk about this stuff. And when he's first asked about it, Robert Downey Jr. says, like, I couldn't assume, like, I couldn't now, as much as 10 minutes after it happened, tell you why I did that, because I'm not the person I was when that happened. And I think that's something I think is very poignant. Maybe Robert Downey Jr., I don't know how he is as a person. I know he's gone through a lot of shit, but I think that idea that people and the media you create is a product of its time, both for good and bad, right? And the people who made Silent Hill 2, like all of them, not just obviously the lead directors, but like the programmers, the guy who worked on the lighting tech, the people who did like combat design, like just every individual aspect. The game they made is the game they would make in 2001 and probably wouldn't make now. They probably would have made it in 2005 even. Like, Resident Evil Remake is essentially, in a lot of cases, based on what we've heard of development, kind of the game that the devs would have made if they had that technology. Like, oh, this would have been our full intent if we didn't have barriers. That's not quite what they've gone for here. And I think the end result of this is that a game on the surface level is inoffensive, is okay, it's definitely feels like an indie studio that does kind of middle of the road on a technical and on a writing level kind of games. But considering the prestige here, it's not good enough. And some of the stuff they get wrong is so fundamentally wrong that, oh yeah, they made that intro cutscene accurate compared to the original preview. Great, that doesn't fix Maria. That doesn't fix Angela. That doesn't fix the tonal combat. That doesn't fix fucking Devil May Cry Pyramid Head. Like, those are big issues that are like core issues in the tone, in the perspective of how they're doing this remake. And look, I don't know if there even is a remake that could necessarily capture this original vision that Team Silent had. Even if they had gone for the literal, we're keeping the gameplay the same, we're keeping the cutscenes the same, or the voices, the only thing we're doing is we're like redoing the graphics in like 4K standard. Obviously we're making it in a new engine, so we're going to have to recreate those effects and things like that. There's even a debate if that would even work, as much as that's the game I wish they had made. Heck, I wish they kind of took that approach and then have gone and then let you use either camera system. Funny enough, recently someone hacked over-the-shoulder camera into Silent Hill 3 and 4. And this is not a knock against the person who made it. It's a technical marvel that they were able to reverse engineer this into this old-ass game. But it definitely negatively impacts the storytelling and the presentation and a lot of the horror when you play through Silent Hill 3 and the camera is on the shoulder. Silent Hill 4, the camera system's bad enough where I might actually recommend playing it that way, because it doesn't control great with the static cameras it uses and the rail cameras. But the common thing I've seen is like, hey, this is cool as a fan project, but this shows you how important this, it's like, it's a good comparison to show you why these fixed cameras work. And I kind of wish this had come out earlier, because then if you could have had this as a reference point to show you shouldn't do this. Here's the end result of moving the camera around, of making these fundamental changes to how the combat feels, how the characters feel, and all this stuff. And, I have to insist upon people, like, Silent Hill 2 is, like, not only an important game in the gaming sphere, like, for what it does for video games. I'm just gonna leave this playing, but we won't listen to the audio. But you get to look at Sado talk and shit. But it's a very important game to people. Like, it touches on some very, very dark themes that have not been dealt with as sensitively and as maturely since, to be frank. I struggle to think of any other game that's tackled some of the really dark and depressing ideas in Silent Hill 2 with the tact that Silent Hill 2 does. And yeah, Blooper especially have tried to tackle this stuff before and done horribly. The medium is like if at the end of the game, Mary did come back to life, but you had to kill her because the monsters of Silent Hill were going to attack everyone if you didn't. Like, that's... the medium has, like, horrific messages and ideas. And tries to tackle some, like, very dark stuff. And tackles it, like, very clumsily. And it does tell, don't show. And that kind of thing. And that's why... And, you know, you just look at their horror output in general. That's why so many people were worried. And though they have done seemingly a better job than the medium, like, a lot of the problems that the medium has are still ring true here, you know? And it kind of feels like people have maybe been tricked, that because the stuff they show to game journalists behind doors demos well, that suddenly everyone's turned around on it and think it looks good. But I'm sorry, like, there is still fundamentally wrong stuff here. It's not stuff that's gonna get fixed within the last 2 months, unless all the footage they're showing is like a year old, which I doubt it is. It looks kind of amateur in place. It looks technically broken in places, like all the facial animation, the janky combat. You know, famously, Bloober teams never done combat in their games. They have no experience making survival horror games. It was questionable they were even picked, you know? Well, you shouldn't fucking pre-order. Also, there's the thing to mention that if you pre-order the game, you can get stupid fucking... Put Robbie the Rabbit helmet on. Put a pizza box on your head. Take this game about these, like, big sensitive issues and fucking goof it up on your first playthrough. People were, like, saying, yeah, it's traumatic and all that. People were bringing up, like, oh, it's not that bad. There's the dog ending, there's the UFO ending. It's like, yeah, those you have to play through the game, like, 2 or 3 times to get. Those don't happen on your first playthrough. But, like, this is being treated so cynically, despite the fact that, yes, people working on the game are trying their best to not make that be the product. Like, that's what's happening to it. And even the people who care about it don't seem to fully get why Silent Hill 2 worked in 2001 and works in 2024 when people play that original version as well. And ultimately, as much as I got a bit tilted and a bit vocal talking about this, more than anything, it depresses me. Because this is such a special game in what it tells, what it says, and it's a thing as well that this original game is so hard to play now. PlayStation 2 copies are getting only more and more expensive over time. If you live in America, they cost fucking... They're almost at like $200 to get them in a decent condition. The only way to play it on PC is to pirate it, because the PC versions go for like thousands, and you have to play with the Enhanced Edition mod to fix them. The only legal way to play the original Silent Hill 2, if you don't buy a used copy, is the fucking HD collection on the Xbox One, and that version's horrendous. They shouldn't fucking sell that version. It's so broken and changed that it doesn't tell the story. And there's a legitimate concern that for a lot of people, this remake is going to be presented as, no, this is fine, you play this, you get the story, because the story has the same events in it. It has the same characters. Oh, well, it has Angela, and she has the same backstory, and it has Eddie, and he has the same backstory. And it's like, yeah, but the story's not told the same. Like, the impact's not going to be the same. And it's just a bummer. It just depresses me more than anything, especially if you've been a Silent Hill fan for like over a decade, seeing where the series was, and then just how poorly things got, like, worse and worse with the outsourcing. Just any old studio that could, like, oh, we can make something that looks vaguely Silent Hill the movie. Oh, there you go. That's good enough. Do you actually know what you're doing? No, that's fine. Just go with it. You're cheap. You're a startup studio in the Czech Republic. Like, go for it. You can do whatever you want with Silent Hill. It's just a brand. It's just an aesthetic. And at this point, it feels like Silent Hill 2 is an aesthetic. You know? Heck, some of the other, Silent Hill The Short Message retreaded Silent Hill 2, and clumsily at that. And made some, like, very toxic messages about bullying and suicide, and playing as a main character who drove a girl to suicide, and apparently, like, redeemed her somehow. But, look, and look, we'll cap this off. Am I going to play this remake? Maybe one day. Not at launch, because I don't have the money. And also, I don't want to give Konami the money. I don't want to enable this behavior. Even if they, I don't think they treat their IPs with respect. And even if the people at Blooper do legitimately believe they love Silent Hill 2, just the fact they're even hired shows they don't treat it with respect. And the fact that it's clearly got this, hey, make it look like Resident Evil Remake, make it look like Over the Shoulder, make it look, quote, modern, shows they don't respect those original games and all that. Also, I don't have a PlayStation 5, and I certainly don't have a PC that could run it anyway. Maybe one day. I know other bigger streamers are likely to show it and show how bad it is. I imagine Pat Starzat's going to do a full playthrough, and he's going to... He's really the guy who's going to be able to point out all this stuff. When they did that Silent Hill transmission, and they showed that they were making a figure of the scene where Maria gets killed by Pyramid Head in the hallway, and in the figure has the great sword, and the narrator says, oh, it's his iconic great sword from that iconic scene. And as quick as that, Pat brings up the cutscene and shows that that's not the weapon in the cutscene. He uses it as a spear in the cutscene. I forget if that's the exact scene, but the scene he shows is like, they got it wrong. I think it's the one where she's hanging upside down. And they're like, oh yeah, it's the great sword. So it's like, no, it's not. Oh no, in the corridor, he doesn't have the great sword, because he's able to keep up with you. He swaps to the sword, because the whole point is that your guilt starts to catch up to you. It's no longer weighing him down, it's weighing you down, because Maria's now the one following you, keeping the guilt with you. So I've just got this... There's so much depth to this symbolism in this writing in Silent Hill 2. I could talk about it for fucking hours, but yeah. I'm sure people like Pat are going to do their playthroughs, and they're really going to break this down. A lot of people who aren't as discerning, or kind of only like Silent Hill 2 in an aesthetic sense, are not going to pick up on this stuff, and that's going to depress me as well. But ultimately, art is subjective. I've recently watched someone play through GoldenEye Rogue Agent. I'm bringing that up because the Sado, the character designer we saw earlier, who worked on Silent Hill 2, wildly worked on GoldenEye Rogue Agent as the character designer on that game as well. Somehow. I don't know how. But I played like the first 3 levels of that game and had fun. And it's not a great game, but I think it has enjoyable mechanics and systems. But, I know some people who wouldn't even get to that point with it. Though I'm always, my position though is I don't like when people kind of like, well, I like this thing, so it can't be bad. I only like stuff that's good. So if I like it, therefore it's good. I don't like that worldview. I think you can... Oh look, here's the first encounter that's in a completely different location. There you go. Oh, look at young Masahiro here. To be young. Yeah, but yeah, you get to see the original, like, how different Pyramid Head looks in those sketches as well. But yeah, But there you go. That's That's my whole point of view. That's probably everything I have to say. There's gonna, obviously, look, when the final game comes out, there's gonna be all the cutscenes, all the dialogue. There's gonna be those new endings. Those are the parts I'm most terrified about, because I'm terrified they're gonna have an ending where Mary comes back to life, or they're gonna have an ending where you save Angela, which is gonna be missing the point. I literally cannot consider any ending added to Silent Hill 2 that isn't already thematically touched by the other endings. Any other ending I can theoretically imagine would undercut the story. But we'll just have to wait and see, you know? But there we go. Let me, I need to wrap up here. Also, I can barely see out my contacts. I've got to get my contacts out ASAP. Also, I don't know why my fucking mouse cursor keeps disappearing. That's really annoying. Alright. Well, there we go. That was a long one. I did not think this was going to take as long as it did. But it's definitely past midnight. I actually can't see very well right now. My contacts have really dried up. Yeah, hey, Clarice, the fact that you want Angela to have a happy ending is the point. The fact that she can't have a happy ending is the point. That's the feeling they want to evoke in you. You know? Ultimately, that's it. It reminds me a while ago, I'm not going to out who it was, but like a big content creator put this hypothetical tweet out. They're like, hey, why don't they make a Silent Hill 2 sequel where you play as Mary? People would love that. And it was like, no, that's a terrible idea. Also, the guy claimed, oh, and you could bring back Pyramid Head then. It's like, well, no, you can't. How could Pyramid Head come back? Pyramid Head is James's guilt for killing Mary. Why would Mary see Pyramid Head? And also, why would she be terrorized in Silent Hill? She's done nothing wrong before she died. It came off, and funny enough, the guy later put a tweet. I was like, wait a minute. Is everyone in Silent Hill supposed to be dead? It's like, oh, geez, you really didn't get Silent Hill, did you? No, they're not dead. One of the endings, like 2 of the endings have the characters leaving the town, so they can't be dead. But that speaks to the idea that, like, you know, at a certain extent, this guy didn't get that Mary, the way the story is told, you're never supposed to see Mary alive. You're only supposed to know Mary as James knows her, like in his heart. Actually having Mary be alive would cheapen the fact that she's supposed to feel like this lost thing that James and the player can never have, because she's not there anymore. You know, it's the, I don't know how Final Fantasy VII's treating a lot of its like story beats and things like that, but it's the whole thing of, you know, well, no, she's not alive in Maria. That's the whole point. She's not Mary. Like, that's, and treating her like Mary is one of the bad endings. That's the ending where you leave the town with Maria and she gets sick, and it's implied that she's just gonna die, because, you know, it's just a cycle. Like, James is not actually recovered from his situation. No, the part of Mary that's supposed to live on is Laura. And Mary is, like, very specific about, like, hey, Laura, I wanted to adopt you. I hope James can look after you. Like, that's the message. That's why, honestly, that is my favorite ending. Because I think it's the one that follows what Mary wanted for James. And the other endings don't, you know? I even if you're playing, it's good to say this stuff, right? Alright, well, we've gone on for a while. We've had a lot to say. And we had so much to say that my attempts to play that Baghead detective thing on the Switch, we're not doing that tonight. It's super late. So, I think I'm going to look at that next week, because I'm going to wait for all 3 parts to come out, and we'll just play as much as we want to play. Yeah, they're doing this weird thing with the demo where they're releasing the prologue in chapter 1 for free, then chapter 2, and then chapter 3 on like 5 days apart, and then you can bring that into the full game. And, you know, we don't know if I'm going to get the full game or not, but I do want to check it out. So what we'll do, Thursday I'll be back, and we will this time actually play Doom Legacy of Rust. I don't know if we'll finish it that night. I'm going to try my hardest to start stream at 9 o'clock and give myself the best chance of finishing that game. And if we finish it, then we're going to probably focus on getting through Marvel's X-Men Legends. Haha, I saved myself there. But yeah, X-Men Legends is quite a sizable game, I'm realizing, so I'm going to try and focus on that as the main playthrough. I've actually got to think what the plans for September are. I know for October we're going to go deep into survival horror. We're going to play some Fatal Frame 2. That's going to be the main playthrough. But I've got to think of some other games I want to play. I want to mix it up so it's not just all like PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2 horror. I want to do Siren, the first Siren game at some point, but I kind of don't want to do that the same time I'm doing Fatal Frame 2, because they're kind of similar. Crow Country would be nice. I might try and save up and get that. No promises, because that depends on money, but I'll try and get Crow Country, because I do hear really good things. Maybe Signalis, if that's cheap enough. But, you know, these are tentative plans, but definitely Fatal Frame 2. But yes, Thursday I'll be back with Doom, and then Saturday onwards, if Doom is done, we're gonna blast through X-Men Legends. If Doom's not done, we'll finish it next week. But that's gonna be my plans going forward. Now let me have a little goosey and see if anyone is online to raid. Aha! Bad Game Hall of Fame is playing Beverly Hills Cop. Hell yeah. I'm raiding into that. Let's, you know, forget Silent Hill 2 Remake. Let's get to a good game, shall we? Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the show. I hope you enjoyed this old gamer man ranting about these old games. Oh, this game's just when I was younger. Look, they do make new games. Fucking, I love Doom Eternal, and that's not an old game. So, haha. Checkmate, atheists. Anyway, yeah, I'll catch you Thursday. Have a good one. And, you know, don't smother your wife. I think that's not cool. That's my hot take. Ultimately. Haha. Haha.